Attention Talking Simpsons listeners, we have a new podcast miniseries exclusively on Patreon right now.
For $5 and up subscribers at patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons, you get Talk King of the Hill Season 2, Part 1.
That's right, we're returning to King of the Hill once again, putting out 11 new episodes covering the first half of the show's second season. Again, that is patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons. Be there or be not right.
Cartoons from present and the past. Every week will be an animated bash. What a cartoon! What a cartoon! Maybe a short but mostly shows. We'll talk, we'll analyze, exploring as we go. What a cartoon! What a cartoon! What a cartoon! What a cartoon!
Hello, everybody, and welcome to What a Cartoon, the podcast that's against mouse supremacy in all of its forms. I'm one of your hosts, the German-fested lowlife Bob Mackey, and this is an audio exploration of every animated show ever. Who is here with me today, as always?
Well, hey, it's Henry Gilbert. You know, Dan Quayle was quite silly, wasn't he?
And who is our special guest on the line?
Regular dirt brain, Professor Gascan.
And today's episode is all about the Capital Critters episode, Hat and Mouse.
I mean, back in Nebraska, we just go out in the field and pick corn.
Yeah, sounds really exciting. Come on, give me a hand here.
And yes, this episode was chosen by our premium patron who is on the line right now. Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name is Professor Gascan. Mostly I'm just that idiot who kind of screws around with the green text on Discord.
And because of Professor Gascan, we're finally getting around to Capital Critters, an important footnote in the history of primetime animation.
Yeah. Now we've covered this, we got to do like Fish Police and Family Dog.
Oh, boy.
Have the trio of shows.
I think this show is best known as a graveyard joke on The Simpsons, a tombstone joke.
Yes.
I mean, much like Fish Police and
Yeah.
Family Dog, I tried watching an episode of Fish Police and I was like Homer doing the Popeye impression. Like, I can't stand no more.
I do think Fish Police is a worse show than this one, ever so slightly.
I think you're right.
Yeah. But
Easily, yes.
not that this is, well, I guess, Professor Gascan, this wasn't one of your favorites growing up.
The thing is, I actually never did watch this growing up. I just, like 3 years ago, I was bored and just noticed that they were all on YouTube. And I thought, I have literally nothing better to do right now. Why don't I just watch all of these?
Well, it's fortunately incredibly available, but also not really available. At least in the official sources, even though it's owned by a giant, corporation, 5 levels above it.
This should be on Disney Plus, right?
Yes, yeah.
Even they don't want it.
Yeah. So as a child in 1992, I did watch the first 2 episodes of it when it premiered. I was properly advertised to, and they definitely had a big advertising rollout for it. And even me, after the second episode, as a 9-year-old who would watch any cartoon, even then I was like, I'm not putting extra effort into watching this. I'm good. I don't need to see the 3rd episode of this show.
I had the exact same reaction as you. I don't know how long I followed it into its, 6-episode run. Maybe just a few in, but at that point in history, any primetime animation was a big deal.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I watched this, I watched Family Dog. I never saw Fish Police for whatever reason. I was watching things like Dinosaurs, which was not a cartoon, but basically was. So it was a big deal if anything like this was put on in primetime. But just like you, Henry, I said, this is not very good.
No.
And, I was spoiled by The Simpsons at this point in my life, so you had to at least be as good as The Simpsons. And The Critic was when that came on ABC a few years later.
I never saw this in the original airing. This is actually too old for even me. I would have been only 2 years old when it came out.
Well, you're making me and Bob feel old now. But 2 years later, when The Critic came out, it had definitely improved some. And also, I think when I was 9 and watching stuff, I definitely had seen, The Simpsons had done their Mr. Lisa Goes to Washington episode by this point. But I still, as a kid, thought, it's on in primetime and it's about the president. This is for grown-ups. Boring.
I will say what does ruin the show even more is that when going back to this for research, I thought the premise was going to be, well, yeah, Bill Clinton has a cat. What if there were mice in the White House? That'd be a crazy idea. But no, this takes place right before Clinton is elected in the dead duck days of the Bush dynasty, where nothing can happen and all the jokes have been made. So yeah, this is not a result of Socks the cat, but there are 2 cats cats in this show that are like Bush and Quayle? Is that the joke?
In the first episode, there's a joke where Jamet says, they don't got cats, they got dogs, and they don't bite us. And then he turns around and, surprise, the president just got cats. 2 cats. One that's the president cat and one that's the vice president cat, which, you know, it isn't even ripped from the headlines. It's just, well, this show, a giant problem with it is that it wanted to be like both a Tom and Jerry cartoon and actually about politics, and it fails in both ways.
Yeah, the political side of it just kind of being that one joke of, oh, those clowns in Congress, they did it again.
Yep,
what a bunch of clowns.
And that unsatisfying mix allows the writer to write basically half of an episode and just pad it out with this unfunny, tedious action.
Yeah. The second episode, I pulled it up just to double check this, but when I watched the second episode, which from my research I found out aired on TGIF, and that's why I watched the second episode, it had a whole bunch of jokes about how a portrait of President Taft was very heavy because Taft was the fattest president. And that was the first time, as I remember as a kid, being pedantic about a joke. Where I'm just like, the weight of the person who's painted in a painting does not make the painting heavier. And it was just a bunch of lame fat jokes that they just set up. Every time they do actual things about like a president, the jokes have to be at least a decade old. They don't do any jokes about even like Reagan in this show.
Now, Family Matters cared about joke construction.
Yeah.
One thing I was going to ask about the cat in this series, do you think this cat has mauled more or less White House staffers than Major Biden has?
Oh, God. Major had to go away. Didn't they just get cats as of this recording? Biden's getting cats in there.
I missed this.
They're less likely to injure people.
I do recall Psaki saying the cat is that they were going to get a cat that would break the internet, I believe she had said.
Best of luck to them.
Yeah. Also watching the show as an adult, I'm just like, in the surveillance state era of America now, like, how could rats ever just walk around the White House and not be like seen every day by...
How could there be a Manhattan of vermin underneath the White House?
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing, is that the show does do that kind of weird, I guess, the Secret of Nim, and I guess to a lesser extent kind of the Charlie Brown thing, where there are humans in the setting, like adult human beings, but you never see their faces. And they're drawn with realistic proportions to them.
It's weird that they want to have their cake and eat it too, of like, well, the president walks in, but it's like you barely see above his elbows, and it honestly could just sub in of like, that could be Bill or Bush. Like, it doesn't, do you just play a clip over it?
You know what? Maybe they were planning that in case there was a new guy and they make another season, they could just, do a new voice.
Yeah.
Probably.
No, they, with the timing of the release of this one, well, they had a lot of plans, I found out, but none of those came. So I watched the first 2 episodes, and then in 1995, it came back to play the rest of the episodes on Cartoon Network. And I do remember watching one of those to be like, oh, wow, they're finally airing the rest of this. And by then I was like, this sucks. Like, I just turned it off in like the middle of the episode.
Exact same reaction. I was like, wow, I forgot about this. How much of this do they make? And then like halfway through immediately, I don't care. What else is on? I'm leaving this.
Yeah, that's why I forgot about it.
Looking at its history, it's an amazing fiasco, which is more interesting to talk about than the show itself.
Yeah, this was the post-Simpsons boom when everybody thought like, oh, we can do that. Come on, how hard is this? Those idiots struck gold by accident. We can easily make something, but it was a lot harder than it looked.
Oh, yeah. And in that era, other shows to copy The Simpsons were greenlit by people who thought, who were used to, oh, The Cosby Show was big last season, we'll have a pilot ready in 6 months. When everybody brought that same kind of thinking to ripping off The Simpsons, they then found out it would take a year to do the copycat show, and in all cases, it got worse. Like, they missed the train entirely. Like, it was already, Bart Mania was over by the time this aired in early 1992, or at least pretty quiet. I wouldn't say over.
I will say in its favor, Capital Critters is a good pun because they're critters who live in the Capitol, and they're also capital critters, madam.
We talk about things that also they don't get right when they try to make these also ran shows. On a technical level, I think the show actually, the animation and the designs on it actually look pretty nice. But the problem is that if you're doing a primetime show, this looks way too kidified.
Oh, yeah.
It really does. And I'm sure you can get into it, Henry, but something I noticed upon looking at the episode descriptions is that they all are seemingly written by one person.
Yeah,
And I think that's a big issue that explains why this is such a low quality series.
only 2 are written by someone other than Nat Malden, and those 2 probably are just like how The Simpsons had the rule of 2 freelancers, one per season. I mean, well, you look at the production of The Simpsons, as we find out that, like, in season 1, I believe it was Vitti and Swartzwelder were not in the room, and Meyer, like, they weren't in the room. It was just Gene and Reese, Sam Simon, Brooks Groening, and Kogan and Wolodarski. Everybody else didn't come into, like, they were trying to keep that writer's room small in the first season and only could really grow it out after. And I think they probably had an even, like, cheaper idea, like, can just one guy, just have one guy write this whole thing.
This really feels like the Saturday morning model, but in the wrong space because, you know, doing What a Cartoon, we've learned, like, oh, yeah, one guy wrote like 40 Muppet Babies. Like, one guy wrote the entire first season of Captain N. That was just what they did. Like, go off, write 13 episodes. We don't care how good they are. We just need content.
Yeah. Well, we need these scripts now
That too.
because it's got to ship to Korea. Like, yeah. Well, yes, I think at the heart of this is that few people who only worked in primetime for live action get involved with people who have only made Smurfs and the Snorks for the last decade. Neither can make the show the other wants. Like, and that.
Yeah.
We've talked about it in season 1, especially of The Simpsons, but I'd say even to this day, there will always be a friction between these live action primetime guys who did all these sitcoms who then work with the animation people who live in a totally different world. They're just, this isn't about taking sides, but it's like they don't work well together sometimes unless there's a mutual respect for their art, which I feel more likely mostly it's the live action guys feeling higher status than the cartoon boys, I have to say. And that's definitely the case in this show.
Yeah, because this is Steven Bochco doing it, and he's the NYPD Blue and Doogie Howser guy.
And he's still cleaning his wounds from Cop Rock.
Yes.
I was going to bring that up.
Well, here, let's go into the history then. So, yes, besides the obvious answer of The Simpsons, why does Capitol Critters exist? Well, it goes down to 2 people I'm going to spotlight here. The late Steven Bochco and Nat Malden, who are 2 of the credited creators, and really they're the 2 main creators. I will talk about the third person named as a creator in a bit. But so Steven Bochco, if you didn't watch TV in the 80s or 90s, you might not know who he is. He got to start in the late 60s in Hollywood as a writer, writing for police procedural shows like Ironside and Columbo. And he even sold a film script for the weird but kind of interesting Silent Running. He wrote that film. By the late 70s, he moved over to Mary Tyler Moore Productions. I couldn't tell if he was there at the same time as James L. Brooks, if they had crossed over, but they were there around the same time. And MTM was like the more prestigious production company than most in TV back then. And he created his first series, the short-lived cop drama Paris, which was the first show to star James Earl Jones, which, you know, sounds pretty cool. I'd honestly want to look it up, but though cop shows are really his thing, as he'd show with his first hit in 1981, Hill Street Blues. Now, I've never seen an episode of Hill Street Blues. Maybe I oughta, but everybody talks about it as this like pioneering cop show that like filmed in a way TV hadn't been filmed before, and it had like actual ongoing story arcs. And
I'm sure it doesn't look as sophisticated now, but for the early 80s, it was a very sophisticated television program.
Yeah.
For me, I can never watch these old NYPD or kind of cop procedurals because I'm too spoiled by Law and Order.
Oh,
Like the seasons from like seasons 5 to 10, I love that show, which of course Peacock still doesn't fucking have on its service.
I know. Man. And it's funny. It's my blind spot for Copaganda. I'm like, oh, I don't like Copaganda, but I mean, you know, how can you not watch Law and Order? It's such a perfect show.
It's so quaint compared to just the kind of the stuff like NCIS, where it's just all about these kooky, awful characters everywhere.
Yeah, I want to hear Sam Waterston give a long speech, or hear Lenny Briscoe say something, some corny joke over a corpse.
You don't want to watch
That's
a 50-year-old goth do like forensics?
But yeah, Hill Street Blues was a big hit, and that launched in 1981. 1981 is also when writer Nat Malden got his first job in the TV writing world, and that was writing for Barney Miller, another cop show. Honestly, I think it's funny that Fish Police wasn't the one these guys worked on, because mostly what they did was cop shows. But Nat Malden also, he's cartoon royalty despite making only one cartoon and one of the worst ever. His father was Bill Malden, the cartoonist for Stars and Stripes. His cartoons.
Never heard of it.
I know.
Is that a book or is that a show?
Is it like a Roger Ramjet thing? Or...
Oh, well, no. Remember, Abe Simpson says the joke of like, I took my picture of my keister for Stars and Stripes.
Oh,
At least
okay.
he told me it was Stars and Stripes.
Stars and Stripes.
Stars and Stripes was the magazine for World War II Army guys, and I believe it kept going for a while after World War II. Or if you guys have ever seen the car editorial cartoon from the day after JFK is assassinated of the Lincoln Memorial crying, Bill Malden drew that.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah. So he, again, the son of a guy already, though I guess not really in Hollywood, but a creator. And one of his earliest jobs actually was as a PA for Chuck Jones in the 60s. So that was the only animation job Malden had, though.
He was getting him coffee during Ricky Tikki Tavi.
Yeah, great. I get to serve under this guy during his twilight years.
He gets the bitter old Chuck Jones complaining. But yeah, so Malden worked on Barney Miller, a show that actually is pretty similar to Hill Street Blues, but it's like the shorter sitcom version of it. And also a character actor parade, like just hideous men doing great acting.
That's where Fish comes from.
It is.
Remember Fish?
So yes, then Malden, after that, by 1984, he became a regular producer on Night Court as well.
That's a good show.
Yeah.
Debatable, but I won't argue with you.
There's
on
going
it.
to be a reboot, apparently.
It's a cartoonier show than this show, I'd say. Night Court is.
Fun fact about that show: the guy who was playing what was it called? Who had the ventriloquist dummy of Bull.
Oh yes,
Remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah, he apparently went on a kind of a stand-up set in Texas, and apparently he died on set. He was not. He was dying up there.
Oh God, Jesus.
I think he's on there's like a Wikipedia list of articles of people who died performing. Look for him on there.
Yeah, well, not literally, but man, I bet he wish he died on that set.
So in 1986, Stephen Bochco then created an even bigger series in Hill Street Blues, L.A. Law, a sexy series about sexy lawyers doing lawyer things sexily. I only heard about it because I just remember hearing stories about like Entertainment Tonight as a little kid saying, "Can you believe on L.A. Law they referenced a menage a trois or something?"
I just know it from a Golden Girls joke in which Rose thinks it's called La La.
That's good. That's
a quality joke. Again, a better show than Capital Critters, Golden Girls. Much better.
Yeah.
Well, look, if they're not wearing sexy miniskirts and being self-reliant, then I don't care.
But so L.A. Law was a huge hit on NBC, and that was 1986, which would then lead us down the road to this show because that hit was so big that ABC was mad they didn't have that show, and so they paid Stephen Bochco a large amount of money to basically have a blank check to create 10 series.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Holy moly.
So if you wonder why some of these shows I'm about to mention got made, it's because he kind of could just make whatever he wanted. If you look at the credits on most of these shows also, Bochco is a very smart man because he creates these shows, then kind of just hands them off to another guy to be the actual showrunner while he just gets the big money, which, hey, nice work if you can get it. Like, for example, the biggest hit he came up with in that time for the first 5 years was Doogie Howser MD in 1989, which he co-created with David E. Kelly, the future creator of Ally McBeal, and he just kind of left Kelly to it. Like, Bochco's like, hey, I got to create 2 more shows. Gotta go. But in 1990, he created, honestly, a bigger fiasco than this show is, Cop Rock.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. We've probably I remember about a couple of months ago, one of those dumbass late night shows recently brought up Cop Rock again, and it was the Baby Merchant song.
What?
Where it's just some guy giving this song that's basically like, I would gladly give you a baby for some money today or something. And is it possible we can bring up the clip just so we can hear it?
Oh, man, I got to pull up this. Let me see this here.
Oh, shit, it's getting funky already.
When you're shopping for a dream come true, a little package in a pink or blue. All depends on who you're talking to.
Does it take place in New York's Baby District?
The thing to keep in mind about Cop Rock is that all the music in it is diegetic. It is happening within that universe. People are reacting to it. Except for that one where just seemingly there's no real choreography. It's just this bewildered couple just kind of looking like, who the fuck is this guy and why is he talking to us?
I was old enough to watch Cop Rock, but I didn't watch it, and I was only aware of it because on Growing Pains they made a joke about Cop Rock, a show on the same network, about how bad it was.
I really only knew it as a reference until I saw clips of it on We Love the 90s, or I Love the 90s collection of just them talking about it as like a joke, like, and how during the show, by the later episodes, they were joking on the show about how they got canceled and how nobody likes it.
I actually heard of it through because of a previous guest you had, Nathan Raven, one of his articles on the AV Club when that site was still worth reading. He had his whole My World of Flops, and that was prominently featured there.
No, it's an incredible flop, bigger flop than this one, and it actually got released on DVD too.
Yeah, honestly, I would argue it's a worse product than this, which is saying something.
Yeah, but I like a bigger, uglier swing but
you know what, I would agree with that.
But yeah, Cop Rock, giant failure as well. But Doogie Howser was his big hit of the first 5 years, and it's a clever enough subject. I remember watching a few episodes as a kid, but it's really just because like 16-year-old prodigy actor Neil Patrick Harris was just really good in the role. Like, you just wanted to watch him.
Yeah, preternaturally talented, you would say.
Incredibly, yeah. He's and he still has that boyish charm all these years into his life. He's probably almost 50 at this point.
I think so, yeah.
Man. But yes, so then 1989, Bart Mania begins. The Simpsons is the first actual animated primetime show since the Flintstones. We don't count Wait Till Your Father Gets Home. Or shows like that.
That show's okay.
But The Simpsons was a crossover hit with kids and adults, which meant it could be merchandised way more than, say, even Doogie Howser because of its crossover with the kids. And also, it was a non-union show, and you could pay the actor squat compared to what you did for a lead in a sitcom. Like, who wouldn't, in Hollywood, want to try to copy this style of production? Stephen Bochco, he had dollar signs in his eyes at this proposal. He's like, yeah, we can make it. One of many people. There's the 3 that went to TV, but there were also like, I'd say a good like 6 or 7 pilots that also failed and tried to be The Simpsons, like Hollywood Dog. Good old Hollywood
There were a
Dog.
few after this, like, I don't know if you remember this, Henry or Gascan, but in the mid-90s, Klasky Csupo made 2 pilots about Edith Ann, the character from Laugh-In, where she had her own, like, world and surrounding universe and characters, but they never became a series.
Yeah.
I'm not remembering this.
Those would be like the TGIF specials. Like, it's a special, like, where they really just dumped a sitcom or a pilot for an animated thing because it cost too much to not use it.
And there was also Lil Rosie, Roseanne Barr, not Rosie O'Donnell. I think Rosie O'Donnell had her own cartoon.
She also would get one, yes. Yeah, they both.
It's confusing because Louis Anderson, also small, fat, funny person who had their own cartoon.
Yeah, now that one I watched as a kid because as a little fat kid, I was like, I want to watch little fat kid stories.
I think that one won an Emmy, though.
It did,
well, This guy's got a terrible father, just like me.
Life with Louie, it also did help that it was directly aimed at kids instead of trying to straddle the line of being a primetime show that kids could watch. But so yeah, Stephen Bochco, I could only find one interview with him where he was actually asked about Capitol Critters, and it was for like the Emmy archives where they want to interview you about every part of your career. But even they were like 90 seconds on it. When he just says, yeah, I wish you worked out, huh? Oh, well.
The response is just him smoking and just with a bottle of whiskey in his hand. Like, he's, don't ask me.
Well, the funny thing is they like ask him a couple questions and they say, and so after that was NYPD Blue, and he's like, oh, that's it for Capitol Critters. Oh, okay, sure. But he admits it was a failure, and he takes some of the blame for it, mainly that he was, too busy, or he didn't give enough of his time to it.
Yeah, that's what it was missing.
But the show did get a bunch of interviews and coverage when it premiered, so I'm sourcing a few of these in here. In those articles from 92, they mentioned that the original idea came from Bochco, and it was definitely a darker idea too, more of a dramedy even. It would have been called Aristocritters. Even worse.
Aristocritters.
Yeah. But the idea was of the rodents that live beneath the White House, and it could be political and have these morality plays about, they're not so different from you and I, which is the spirit of this episode.
We'll get into that more later.
Oh, yeah.
I've got feelings on that.
But yes, Bochco admits it's really hard to do animation. I was surprised. That shows you the mindset that all these guys were in of it's a cartoon. How hard can it be? But like he did with his other shows, he smartly partnered with someone else to do all the hard work on it. That was Nat Malden. And based on interviews from the time, Malden was the real showrunner and creative force of the show, not to mention he's the credited writer on all but 2 of the episodes. And also, at the same time, in the articles with interviews with him, which Malden has not done any interviews about this show since, though he's still alive and working in Hollywood. But at the time, the articles are and he's working on the sequel to Roger Rabbit. He's a script. And I was like, that didn't work out.
He was probably one person attached to 8 of the possible sequels.
Oh, yeah.
And this show strikes me, there was not a writer's room, was there? This show was so barren of jokes. I feel like
no.
No way, no. And yes, let's talk about the third credited creator on this, who is Michael I. Wagner. And he does have more of a developed by credit of he helped workshop it, but got to keep a created by credit. But unfortunately, the Wagner was a top writer on Hill Street Blues, wrote several of their Emmy-winning episodes. He worked on a failed show with Isaac Asimov, he co-created a sitcom with Isaac Asimov, and he worked on some Next Generation Star Trek. He was a real sci-fi guy. Sadly, he would pass away from cancer weeks after this show premiered in April of
It was the
1992.
final nail in his coffin.
When this premiered and failed, he's like, why try anymore?
no reason to go on.
No.
Flatline.
But okay, so these guys have this idea for a cartoon about rats in the White House, but who's going to actually animate it? None of these guys worked on cartoons. Well, in mid-1990, Hanna-Barbera was up for returning to prime time, and I suppose if you're, a network who has worked with Hanna-Barbera before, you know that they are dependable, that, 20 years earlier, they worked on a primetime sitcom, so they probably still have the chops, and so they land the job as the production company, which, if you're just looking at resumes, they have a better resume than Klasky Csupo in 1990, and...
At this point, had they been purchased by Turner yet?
Not yet.
Okay, thank you.
No, yeah, but
I don't want to jump the gun here.
But they're on their way. But yeah, so they're hired to be the production house. Ironically, right after that, they'd also be hired to produce Fish Police. So they're doing both of the shows. On the Hanna-Barbera side of things, basically you had a bunch of very tired lifers on the show working on it. It was headed up by Davis Doy. He was the exec producer on the H&B side. I did a whole thing about him on our Scooby-Doo Zombie podcast, but he's one of those I'm a lifer at Hanna-Barbera. I started in the mailroom and I worked up and until I think he stuck around until it just got way too corporate for him in the Warner years.
Sold out man.
Yeah. Credited director on every episode is Robert Alvarez, who I don't think we've really talked about on here, but he is a really interesting guy. He is a true legend of TV cartoons. He got his start in the 60s. He worked on Yellow Submarine as one of his first jobs. Most of it was produced in England, but there were some satellite studios in the U.S., and he was an intern at those. Starting in the 70s, he worked in Hanna-Barbera, worked there for decades. When the company got bought by Cartoon Network, Alvarez still stayed working at the company. He worked on Powerpuff Girls, Samurai Jack, Regular Show, all the way up to this year's Infinity Train. And
God damn.
I think he's just, this veteran who knows it all and is this guiding hand to folks who have never produced their own show before. So he's been there for every era, the start of Scooby-Doo, the Smurfs era, Capital Critters, the Purchase, and then the cartoon era, and up to the HBO Max era. Alvarez is still doing it. What I couldn't find were any interviews where Alvarez talked about Capital Critters.
That's a running theme here, and nobody's really able to talk about this.
But I did find one podcast interview with him that was pretty, where I learned all that stuff I just said about him. But the interesting thing is, he did say when people are critical of some of the junk he had produced, he said, I tell this to my to the younger guys all the time. if you get to make anything that you like, you should feel lucky because you just get assigned things when there's work. Like he told this story that was heartbreaking about when he worked at Hanna-Barbera. You were on for 6 months while producing the show, and then when it was over, you might not have another show. So Hanna-Barbera counted on you to be on unemployment some of the time.
Wow.
They're like, they were subsidized by welfare. He's saying this back in the 70s when you actually could count on it better, but like that's like evil on Hanna-Barbera's part, I gotta say.
It's like a Walmart move.
Yeah, I know a lot about that.
But Alvarez, he sounds like a really good guy, and I'm sure, he got handed these scripts, and he's like, whatever, I know what you guys want. We're making Tom and Jerry kids at the same time. It's basically that, right? Like, that's my assumption. But any negative I have to say about this, I think the Hanna-Barbera animators did the best they could with a limited budget and time frame, and also being handed like crappy scripts written by people who don't write cartoons.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the biggest problem with this is, I mean, it's not the animation quality. The animation is fine. I just feel like there was this, I don't know what the word is for it, just people who just did not know how to make this cartoon. They were the ones kind of coming from on high to give all the directions to it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and so, yeah, Bochco, I think the only real other thing than the concept he came up with was also leaning on his recent star, Neil Patrick Harris, to be the lead in this series and cast him as Max, the Nebraska farm mouse in the big city.
Boy, he is so miscast in this show.
He sucks.
Yeah, he's like a young actor. I don't know if he's, improved as a voice actor. I have to assume he has, but
yeah.
Everyone else has a crazy cartoon voice, and he is just, everything he says is so flat and earnest. And I don't like him as a main character.
No, he's bad. And I can't blame him because, like acting on screen is quite different from acting in a booth.
I will say I think he's improved quite a lot since this time. He's been Spider-Man in a few things.
Right,
I think
right.
he's a pretty good Spider-Man. He's not my favorite voice of Spider-Man, but he's up there. I think he's a fine Spider-Man.
Yeah, that great MTV Spider-Man that we all loved.
But NPH is like the only star power they have on this. Well, actually,
I can name one guy.
There's one guy, but mostly it's just full of the regulars of cartoons of 1991. Like you got Charlie Adler as co-star, the bad boy Janet.
Doing like 10% less Buster Bunny than normal.
Yeah.
It's like even more Brooklyn Buster Bunny is happening in the show.
Yeah, 10% less Buster Bunny, 50% more crazy white boy.
It's an angrier, older Buster Bunny who's like, I seen some shit, man. I just want to eat grapes, say. But yes, no, the other big star is Bobcat Goldthwait as Muggle, the silly machine, the wacky man who explodes.
I mean, he's gone through some stuff. He's reinvented himself. At this point in history, he was a joke, right? Have he lit the Tonight Show couch on fire yet, or is that coming up?
I think it was after, because at the start of 92, Carson was still the host. So yeah, it would be after. But yeah, I mean, also he would be better used in Hercules like 7 years later.
That's right.
But yeah, he was the monkey cheese machine and Muggle. But most of the other actors are just like, oh, this is the people you hear in everything. I think even as a kid, I knew that was like, I hear these voices in all the Saturday morning things. This doesn't feel separate from or different from a Saturday morning cartoon. That Jim Cummings, Frank Welker, Rob Paulson. There is another actor who is a regular, but I'll talk about him when we get to the episode itself because he's the big star of this episode.
I would also note that Paul Eating is actually on this show too. He's only in the first episode, but he is playing Max's dad, and he sounds completely unrecognizable.
Sorry, you need to remind me who Paul Eating is. I forget.
He's the guy who voices Colonel Campbell in Metal Gear Solid.
Oh wow!
And Grandpa Max on Ben 10. That's probably where more people would. He sounds like older brother Max. That's how much younger he sounds on this.
These mice are on a sneaking mission in the show constantly.
And overseas animation was handled by the usual Hanna-Barbera outsourcing place, Wang. Wang Films in Seoul. And so, okay, I can tell you this from reading interviews at the time in 1992. I think Nat Malden had no clue what he was doing with his show, and he whined a whole lot in print, like credited, whined a whole bunch about minor inconveniences that are related to making a cartoon. And this was like published before it premieres. He's being a jerk about it. Like, his complaints in this LA Times interview were like, production takes too long. It took like 15 months. It's too expensive to re-record lines of dialogue. Why doesn't this look like a Disney film? They made this movement of a bus look cheap. I wanted this to look really good. Like,
oh my God.
Yeah, it's like, this is what you get for $600,000 an episode back then. If you thought it could look like a Disney short, then you don't know what cartoons look like in 1990.
And I was thinking, so the show Dinosaurs, was mentioned earlier, that's not an animated show, but clearly it was a response to The Simpsons. I know Jim Henson had that idea for a while, but the way it came out was a response to The Simpsons in that it was a take on old sitcoms. But you could tell, like, they looked at what makes The Simpsons popular. Let's have similar satire and dirty jokes and characters with catchphrases. Let's do all that. This show does none of that. In fact, the format is just like, is this like The Great Escape in every episode? Is that what they're doing? Is that what they're going for?
They're just living there. That's it. Every episode is like, oh, what are we doing today? Like, that's it.
But they're running all these like ops, and you see it once and you're like, is this in every episode where it's like this complicated, like, again, I'm thinking of The Great Escape where everyone has their own role and they're running these like missions and stuff. It's not funny after you do it once.
And, I didn't get this until I watched the opening again today, and I was like, wait, this show rips off Fraggle Rock. Like, this is just a rip-off of Fraggle Rock. Yeah, which, though Fraggle Rock is much better at telling, like, these fables, basically, that have lessons to learn about stuff. Like, this show sucks at that, too. But Malden comes off as so whiny in these interviews. And also, if I want to give him any, slack, I'd say I think by early 1992, as it's about to air, he knows it's going to fail. And he's, like, taking whatever out he can of, like, somebody said, asked him, oh, people are going to compare it to The Simpsons. He's like, I don't know why people would compare it to The Simpsons. I love The Simpsons, but this is a different type of show than that show,
At least he was perceptive enough to know it would fail, I guess.
But when I see all of his complaints, like, no wonder this show sucks so hard. Like, okay, here's a specific example of one thing he really whined about, because he said when he was saying how expensive it is, he was complaining about having to do ADR on it, like of having to record new lines. So one example was in the second episode, I watched this to confirm it, but they had originally written a joke where Jamet picks up the big red phone and prank calls Gorbachev, and by the time it aired, Boris Yeltsin was in charge of, and the USSR didn't exist anymore. And so in this interview in 92, as it was premiering, Malden was complaining, like, if we had to re-record it and make a new joke, how much does that cost? Like, when I was watching this, like, since every human's face is not on screen, they could do ADR for every political specific and be more accurate than they ended up being in the show of talking about, like, nothing. Like, characters say, we need environment. No, we don't, Senator. Like,
yeah, like I was saying earlier, the show feels like it's engineered to be tampered with at the last minute because of how long the production is and because it's trying to be kind of topical.
But instead, all of his, like, complaints are that it would be hard to do that and it costs too much money. Like, it's unbelievable. Like, also if this is not supposed to be for kids, like, Tiny Toons was meaner to H.W. Bush than this show was. Like,
this
has
true.
No biting satire to it at all.
This doesn't even feel like it's for adults at all in any sense.
No. Well, with Tiny Toons, Many Hands Makes Light Work, because that show had like 5 production studios working on it.
Oh, sure. Yeah, no, its budget probably had to be like triple an episode of Capital Critters. But an interesting thing, after he did that complaint in the LA Times in early 1992, by February 1992, veteran voice actor Michael McConaughey, who had already been working on like Transformers and G.I. Joe, and who to this day is still a voice actor and director. If you look at his page, you're like, you've played 700 video games or watched 800 animes that he's a voice in. He did an opinion piece in the New York, LA Times to be like, that's bullshit. It does not cost any money to do ADR. What's it, $500? Like, this guy's full of crap. Like, thumbs up to McConaughey for calling him out on that bullshit excuse of saying it's so expensive. But I think he also, like, he was complaining it takes so long to make it because there was like, I think they wanted the entire series to be done, all 13 episodes to be finished before they started airing. So it took him 15 whole months. And by that point, Bartmania was kind of over.
Yeah.
And funnily enough, too, by the time it premiered in early 1992. In the fall of 1991, Hanna-Barbera got purchased by Turner, so this would be the last type of deal they'd make to do a show for anybody but a Turner production. This is kind of the end of an era for Hanna-Barbera as well.
That's how it ended up being Cartoon Network filler.
Yes, yeah, because I think ultimately they just got the rights to it, and ABC was like, all right, forget this. But before that happened, as they were leading up to it, some execs thought this would still be the next Simpsons. They had plans in place. Kenner Toys made Capital Critter Toys.
Okay, I'm glad you brought that up because I'm on eBay now, and I'm about to hit the button on the entire set for $60 because I think it'd be funny when I move to live with my wife in Canada and we're decorating our new house. We can have just all the Capital Critters characters on display. So when we invite people over, we can say, "Oh, of course, here are the Capital Critters cast. We all love Muggle and Max, and there's little Jamet. We love him the most."
What a rascal.
Yeah, our new miniseries, Talking Critters.
God, we will never put that on a poll. And what surprises me about the 6 available characters you can buy, by the way, there's a Burger King Kids Club meal.
Yep.
The figures suck. They're just like statuettes.
Awful.
Yeah.
Some of the worst. The Simpsons ones, at least they're like, oh, it looks like them in the camping episode. That's fun. This is like Max is shirtless above the White House for some reason. I don't understand.
It must be an old design or something.
Yeah.
But as part of the 6 characters you can buy for this Kenner set, 2 of them are the most racist characters in the entire show. The cockroach with the swastika on his hat. The swastika is not on the doll, by the way.
all
You have
right.
to
Oh
add
my
the swastika
God, that
yourself.
fucking character.
So that guy and also Ratso Nasty, the other racist. So 2 of the
Okay.
most racist characters in the show who are not redeemed at the end of this episode. You can just smash them together at home. It's fun.
Wow, I totally know why that happened. Kenner must have said, like, kids need the villains for Jamet and Max to fight. Who are your villains in the show? Like, well, I guess the 2 guys who are gonna lynch people in the show. So yeah, they had the Kenner Toys. They had a Burger King Kids Club meal. I could not find any other information on it, but in that 1992 article, they said they were making a video game also.
I bet they turned it into something else. Whoever was making it, it's another platformer that came out in 1993.
Yeah, it became like the Marsupilami SNES game or whatever.
Unseen 64, please, somebody find what happened to this Capital Critters game. I gotta guess it was like, you think it would be Ocean or do you think it would be, I'm gonna say Ocean.
Yeah, Ocean would be your go-to guys for this crap.
Yeah, I would say Ocean or Data East.
Oh, yeah. So, Capital Critters, with all that wonderful press going into the release of it, debuted on the last Tuesday night of January 1992, partnered with a brand new episode of reliable family hit Full House. And then its second episode would be planned to air the same week on Friday on TGIF. And then the next week, it would go to its regular time slot Saturday because they flew too close to the sun, ABC. They had all these hits with TGIF, and they're like, hey, we got this new show, Capital Critters. Let's move Perfect Strangers to Saturdays. All the kids are going to go to Saturdays. No, they did not. It killed Perfect Strangers as well.
God, no, why? Jamet killed Balky.
I mean, also you look at Muggle, that feels like a character they were told, like, hey, give us a Balky, give us the Urkel. It's like, well, I guess Muggle?
He's even got a loud Hawaiian shirt on.
But the show, even on its premiere night, it lost viewers from Full House, but still got like over 15 rating, which would be the #1 show on TV right now if it got that. But it instantly, was falling down. It became a joke. And I have to say, when I watched that first episode, what in the fuck were they thinking? The first 5 minutes of the first episode, Max's entire family is murdered on screen.
I thought so, yeah. You roll from an episode of Full House where Stephanie is in a spelling bee to watching parents die.
They get Doc out. They get like gas chambered in that first episode.
I can't believe it. Like, as a kid, I don't know what I thought with that. I probably was like, what is this show? Because it's both stupider and kiddier than The Simpsons, but also The Simpsons would never like murder a family on screen and mean it. Like that is the difference. I think that is Bochco saying, he probably in his original presentation was like, this is a hard show about a country mouse who goes to the big city after his whole family is killed. And it's about how hard it is to be a vermin and how you have to work how could that get to that stage? Somebody, when they were drawing the scenes of the mother like gasping for air
God.
and
Yeah,
while
like
holding
clutching
onto-
at the chicken wire.
and Max just in shock of like what child didn't turn that off, or like the parents are going like, oh my god, click, like but that's why it failed. I think
I'm also annoyed a character is named after the city we live in, and it's all to bash on hippies.
yes, yeah, that
Yeah,
too.
like a hippie character, when even that would, it's like, this type of person does not exist.
And how do you know she's a hippie? She's wearing a shirt with a peace sign on it.
know.
This is not subtle at all.
So, yes, ratings would go down, down, down on Saturday nights. The final episode would air on March 14th, leaving 6 of them unaired. It's actually the exact same number of episodes that The Critic got to air. Critic aired 7 and then had 6 that got dumped in the summer. Capitol Critters didn't even get that. They didn't even get to air their last 6 on ABC. You would think ABC would learn their lesson after this by working directly with the Simpsons producers, and 2 years later would premiere a new show. But most of the same problems would just repeat again. Of like, in that case, their lead-in wasn't Full House, it was Home Improvement.
Yeah.
But either way,
They were both mismatched. And then I was thinking, boy, they had a rocky history with primetime animation, because the next show that I can remember they made was Clerks.
Yup. Yeah, that's right. Which they aired twice, 2 times. And Capitol Critters.
Yeah, more like Capital Critters.
It got to languish in the Hanna-Barbera inventory for a few years because it was just like, it became a punchline of the industry, just total flop. And everybody wanted to put their hands off it like, hey, not my fault. Especially, you know, after it failed that toy production too and the video game. I think there's a lot more people to be mad than just like when a regular like new sitcom fails. You're not letting down the toy people and the video game people and the Burger King people. But yes, the rest of it wouldn't air until late 1995 when Cartoon Network dusted it off for an experimental block of more adult programming, you'd say, that started at 8 p.m. But that'd never work on Cartoon Network. Meanwhile, for Bochco, this was like an asterisk in his biography. He probably gave it a second thought after like April 1992. He would move on in 93 to create NYPD Blue, his biggest hit. And I'd say really the reason that show is great is because David Milch is the co-creator of it, and he's the creator of Deadwood. And I think Milch is like one of the greatest writers for television there ever was. But for Bochco, pretty much the rest of his shows were one-season junk. Like NYPD Blue was his last successful show. After that, he did the Gina Davis show Commander-in-Chief that got canceled in like 8 episodes.
I only know that because it's referenced on That's My Bush. And by the way, I just want to underline how awful the opening of the first episode is, because I was skimming through while we were talking. Not only is his family gassed, they're also beaten with baseball bats and shot. His entire family is just brutally wiped out.
Oh my god, they get shot? I forgot that.
There are shadows of humans with guns shooting at mice.
Yeah, it's incredible. But yes, so he'd create a bunch of like generic, like a show called Raising the Bar, the Paul Gosselaar lawyer show that no one remembers.
I think that's called Suits.
That's, I think, his other show. This was the one before that.
Franklin
show.
and Bash? Are they doing things in the show?
Not that one. No, but they're all just generic shows. If you read the title of them, like Murder One, like all these things, you just don't remember. But what's Bochco care? Like he died of a billionaire, no, a multi-millionaire. Sadly passed away of leukemia in 2018, age of 74. Nat Malden, meanwhile, I think based on his credits, for a couple years he was in TV jail for being the Capitol Critters guy. But then he'd get out of it, and his next thing in 1995, when he would be the executive producer on the even bigger failure Clerks pilot. With Jim Brewer.
And Dave Chappelle's in it.
Yep. Yeah, he's
Really?
yes. Nat Malden, I think was the showrunner, because I pulled it up on YouTube, and he's like the first credit on it, like executive producer Nat Malden. Like, so Capitol Critters to the Clerks pilot, which I think Kevin Smith said, like, I had no clue they were making that until after it got made. But then Malden would transition into his new role as a writer for Screen, and he actually has some very big screenwriting credits. He wrote for Denzel Washington's remake of The Preacher's Wife. I think The original is The Bishop's Wife, I think it is. He also wrote Open Season, the Eddie Murphy Dr. Dolittle. He wrote a lot of movies, and I'm sure he's living very comfortably, never even thinks about Capital Critters. The most recent thing I could even find of him was there was like a gallery showing of his father's art, and he's pictured in it of like a family, including son Nat, is here for the premiere. Like, and he just said, "My dad's art will live forever." Like that, not really an interview, but he's still kicking around. Nat Malden is. And the show only lives on in ugly uploads of VHS recordings off of ABC and Cartoon Network.
And through us, I guess.
And through this podcast, yeah. Even in the DVD boom of the aughts, never got put on a DVD. I wonder if it's that like ABC or Bochco just wants to keep it hidden, or it has, mixed ownership, or maybe everybody involved is just like, no, I can't. People shouldn't see this. Let this be forgotten on the junk pile of history that looks like Jamet's dirty bedroom. But yes, that is the history of Capital Critters. Why don't we take us a break, and then we come back to the very important parable about hate and love, Hat and Mouse.
Watch these.
They're unpredictable.
Excuse me, I'm going to explode.
He does that sometimes.
They're unforgettable.
You wake up, you eat flies, you die.
They're animals.
Be very, very quiet. I'm a hunting rabbit.
From the producers of Doogie Howser MD comes the new first family of fun, Capital Critters. Special preview next Tuesday. It's Eek-Week.
Eek the mouse. Eek the mouse. Eek a mouse.
It's a unique triple sneak peek at some real party animals.
No freaking way.
Eek a mouse.
Catch Capital Critters Tuesday, Friday, and Saturday on ABC.
Oh, where's that mouse? I'll show him who's the boss.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the ad break for Capital Critters. I'm Bob Mackey, and I'm asking, a mouse in the White House? It happened. Who is here with me today?
Hey, yo, those are my melon rinds. Hey, it's Henry Gilbert, and a big thank you to our guest this week, Professor Gascan, for picking this one and for coming on with us. He is a top-level patron, and we really appreciated having him on, and an excuse to cover such a junky-ass, totally forgotten cartoon from the side effects of Bartmania back in 1992.
From the creator of Doogie Howser.
Yeah.
If you want to be cool like Professor Gascan, please head on over to patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons. When you sign up there, you get all these episodes 1 week ahead of time and ad-free, and also access to everything behind the $5 paywall. That includes all of our limited miniseries we've done for the past 4 years, over 100 bonus podcast episodes covering things like King of the Hill, Futurama, The Critic, and Mission Hill, and so many more other things, including interviews and other things for Talking Simpsons. Just so much is happening behind the $5 paywall. You get it all for signing up at patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons. And there's a $10 level as well. When you sign up for that, you get access to all the $5 stuff, of course, but also one mega-long podcast once a month, only for patrons of that level or higher. And what was that, Henry?
Bob is talking about the What a Cartoon Movie podcast. Now, if you're a listener of this podcast on the free feed, no doubt you just saw our extended preview of Cool World. And believe me, it gets meaner than that, than what you heard on there. If you want to hear the full, often over 4 hours of chat about an animated feature film, you need to sign up at the $10 level to hear that exclusive premium podcast once a month. Last month we did Cool World. This month we're doing Hercules, the 1997 Disney film. Before that, we've covered films as diverse as Shrek, Kiki's Delivery Service, A Goofy Movie, Akira, Beavis and Butthead Do America, and tons more. If you signed up today, on top of all the $5 things Bob just mentioned, you would have over 130 hours of What a Cartoon movies at your disposal, and a new over 4-hour one each month besides. If you enjoy What a Cartoon, you are depriving yourself of awesome podcasts if you're not listening to the full version of What a Cartoon movie each month. So please check all of that out at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons.
And if you've never signed up for Patreon before, it is so easy to do. And once you do sign up, you're given a code you can access at any time. You just drop that code into whatever you use to listen to podcasts. And that way you can download all of our bonus podcasts alongside your free podcast as part of your podcasting lifestyle. And there is also a app for any smart device you might have that Patreon has. And that way you can download our bonus podcasts as well. But either way you do it, it is so easy to access everything waiting for you behind the paywall at patreon.com/Talking Simpsons.
So now let's travel back to H.W. Bush's White House and the rest of Capitol Critters.
Now at Burger King, you can get your paws on your favorite Capitol Critters. Max, Muggle, Jamet, and Presidential Cat. You can collect all 4 kits, one with every kid's meal at Burger King, where the critters are just waiting to be caught.
You're right at Burger King now.
Democrats and Republicans, oh my. Mice and rats and roaches in the White House, oh my. The White House is overrun with Capitol Critters. Saturdays at 8:30 on the best place for tunes, Cartoon Network.
All right, and everybody got to hear the Bruce Broughton written theme song for the show. He's an Emmy-winning and Oscar-nominated composer for TV and movies, so they at least got in like a big-time dude. But the animation of the opening is like, it's just Flintstone kids. Like it's really just paced like a Saturday morning opening.
Yeah, and I actually like the theme. It's kind of stuck in my head. It reminds me of like Police Academy or something, but it doesn't really match the show.
No,
yeah, it's not a bad composition, but yeah.
Tonally, it is not a fit. I think they just told the guy, well, this is a show about like the White House. He's like, hail to the chief is the starting point. Got it. A bunch of pomp and circumstance. And that was the moment I really thought it was Fraggle Rock, when it goes through the tunnel and then down to where the mice and rats are dancing, and it goes like and you
get the fun sax in there too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's how you know it's a 90s production.
Oh, the wonderful. Yeah, ABC wouldn't let you air your show if your theme song didn't have saxophone in there at some point.
I'm looking at themes he's done. He's done the theme to Jag, to the recent The Orville, and I think there was something in here about Tiny Toon Adventures and dinosaurs.
Yeah. I think he did, TV composition for those shows, not those theme songs, but yeah, I guess Jag would probably be his most famous theme, I suppose. Not that it's to us, but Jag had like 8 million episodes and giant ratings with the over 50 crowd.
Come on, I can think of the Dinosaurs theme song.
Oh, okay, sure. Yeah, I prefer Dinosaurs. That I watched every single week. Like, that was the Simpsons ripoff that really got me. Even when the Simpsons made fun of it as calling it a ripoff, I was like, I still like dinosaurs.
I disagree with Homer. It's like, yeah, they are very much like the Simpsons. Anyways, I'll watch both shows.
Yeah.
I have to say, a lot of things in my notes are blank happens and it takes forever. And that's really the tempo of the show, isn't it?
My first note, which is really just kind of a note for the series in general, and I have it underlined, is constant unresolved racial animosity.
Yeah, that it wants to say something about racism and hate and bigotry, but it's also mangled together, and its stance seems to be like, well, what are you going to do? I also want to say the logo is lame as hell. Like, it's just when they smash into the logo, I'm like, that sucks. Like, it's white background. Like, you give this another pass, I thought.
It feels like something I would see like on an insurance company down the street from here.
And you also see, like, the Roach City is right there in the opening, too. You get to,
I have so many problems with this thing they're doing here in the show. It just, you didn't think twice about, what if all the ethnic creatures were worse vermin?
Yeah.
And I have ethnic in quotes because that's what the show considers. Anyone with an accent is a lesser kind of vermin.
It is just a city full of dirty immigrants. That's how it's portrayed.
Yeah. At a certain point in this cartoon, there is a Jewish couple who are roaches, and I was thinking, did a Nazi draw this cartoon?
And then an actual one showed up 5 minutes later.
Exactly. I was like, well, there's the swastika I was looking for.
Well, so that's weird because if they had a Jewish rat, then they're also in a problem there symbolically, so they can't really do that. But the character of Mose appears in the first episode. And when I rewatched that, I was like, okay, in my head, they wrote it that all of the rats and mice, they are white. They are coded white. And when I saw Mose, I was like, oh, so the roaches were coded as black. But then when they go down to the city that's even featured in the opening, I was like, oh, no, it's just if you're not white, you're a roach. Like that really complicates the metaphor quite a lot here.
Yeah, you have to think about what you're saying when you have these sort of things in your show. And
that they live below them, too.
Well, because there are rats who are coded as being black, and I think a few of them are Hispanic as well. So I feel like I guess it's in practice, it ends up being more kind of like a suburban versus urban divide, because the rats are all in the nice, relatively clean basement, but all the roaches are between the walls in the city.
Yes, though I think too it brings in a lot of I think really Nat Malden was taken off of West Side Story, where it's like there's a lot of sharks and jets thing, and the positioning in that is like Jamet is low class, but he is low class but white, who looks down on people who are like, oh, you're different from me, even though we're all at the same income level and we're both street toughs. I look down upon you because you're not my type.
It does seem also very cynical in that the main character, you see all this through. I mean, Fish Out of Water is just a common way to tell a story, and that's fine. But they were also like, well, this is the people we want watching the show. This is the demographic we're looking for, these Midwesterners.
Yeah. I also, I rolled my eyes very hard every time he was like, well, in the Midwest, they don't do this. I was like, oh, yes. Yeah, the famously not racist Midwest where no one
why is this such a shock to him?
And we would never treat anyone wrong in the Midwest. In Nebraska, no.
And then when he makes the, in the Midwest, we did this, it's not even a joke. It's just we picked corn or something. It's just well, that's not funny. Do a Rose talking about St. Olaf in Golden Girls, where it's a fun, whimsical place you came from or something like that.
Instead, he's literally describing what he does in the first episode while his family is killed. The reason Max in the first episode doesn't die with his family is because he was allowed to do his first corn picking. I guess, too, if I want to be extra pedantic about the world they build here, often Max will go hey, you can't, that's stealing, don't take that. It's what is theft to a rat?
Yeah.
You can't buy these things. You don't have money. They'll step on you. You only live to steal things because there's no other way you can exist in it. I mean, also, there's jokes where the mice answer a telephone and a person on the other end hears them. So it's wait, these rats in this world can talk and be heard, and they wear clothes.
Well, in this episode, a mouse rides a can of Billy beer across the room, and humans are I guess that happens in this world.
Yes.
He doesn't give a shit. They just act like they see it all the time.
Dick Cheney's got to go, kill some people. Or Elliot Abrams, it flies by. He's just I got to kill people. Who cares? One thing I'll say that this show rips off so many things, but they actually get this out 6 months before Fern Gully comes out, and Muggle is just Batty from Fern Gully.
I was thinking the exact same thing.
I didn't think of it till now, but you're right.
Now, I mean, Fern Gully was in production longer, I would bet, but it's the same deal of that was the thing he talked about in 1990 as a important issue, animal testing, which, is bad. And I heard all those people in Washington, they said they dealt with it. So I'm sure it doesn't happen anymore.
I mean, Pinky and the Brain was the best version of that.
Oh, yeah.
Batty and this character are just dumb.
Yes.
Awful.
they thought Muggle was going to be a big ass deal because like he's exploding all the time. Like, isn't this so funny? I think the only reason he doesn't drive me incredibly crazy is that I do like Bobcat Goldthwait's voice.
His exploding just confused me. I was just like, why is this happening? How can he cause this to happen? I don't get it.
Yeah, he just spontaneously combusts, but he's fine. It makes him fly. He also just flies sometimes. Like that. If this is a show that wants to show you characters like who are actually worried about dying, and like characters die more often than you'd think on this show.
Yeah.
In spite of that, they also have a exploding white mouse who just is like monkey cheese. Like,
yeah, somehow he's impervious to everything.
But yes, the episode itself opens with them scurrying around for a very long time.
Oh.
Just
it takes 2 minutes before anyone actually has dialogue.
I bet you Nat Malden just wrote, I just say his name, Malden. He wrote this script without realizing how animation is timed. And the animators were like, this can't last for 23 minutes. So I guess we're just going to have to do like a minute of goofing around gags in the kitchen.
Yeah, these episodes are so underwritten. And I think, again, they weren't ripping off The Simpsons enough because he's like, what am I writing a cartoon? What do cartoons have? A bunch of bullshit antics. They can figure that out. I'll write one like stage description on the script and they can figure out what that will do for the next 45 seconds. And my job is done.
And the poor bastards animating this, they actually do draw a lot. Did either of you notice any kind of reused animation in anything in this episode?
You know, not really. No, I think they actually, you know, there's the worst I could tell was occasionally a scene like Muggles freak out a little bit into the episode. It moves very choppily and slow, which I think it just feels like they had 2 seconds of animation. They stretched to 5. But like actually repeated stuff, this guy should have used it more. Like if he should have gone to the Gene and Reese school of like chop it all up, rewind it, replay it.
It fluctuates. I'm looking at it now. Sometimes it is just, you know, Hanna-Barbera of the era. Often it's just like, well, this is too smooth.
Yeah.
There's too much work put into this for what you're doing on the show.
Yeah, some of the close-ups actually look pretty good, but.
And so yes, they're climbing around the White House kitchen. I Googled this. I should have done this before when on The Simpsons, they had the joke that the White House has 3 food kitchens. And but according to Google, that is still true. There's 1 main kitchen, 1 diet kitchen, and 1 family kitchen.
I'm learning stuff from the show.
But like, isn't it dangerous to not have a secured kitchen full of the food that will be served to like the leaders of America?
It should be locked down.
This show shows you the Secret Service fails. Like they are not as good as you think they'd be. But yeah, we just have to see like a very long sequence of like, I feel like the script thought this would be a bunch of like Chip and Dale goofer arounds, but it's like, yeah, it's just so long. I think Alvarez was right to just give medium effort to these things just to show like, and then like a dozen rats run out holding slices of bread.
They also can't quite get the scale of the objects that the vermin are using.
Oh yeah.
Because these flashlights they're carrying are like, they are rat sized. Like they fit in their hands and stuff.
Well, I was sending images of this to my wife while I was watching it, and she was like, why are the roaches bigger than the mice? And I was just like, I don't know.
Yeah, they're African hissing cockroaches.
How did this mouse have a hat? I don't understand that either.
They can steal doll clothes,
I guess so.
From the Bush grandchildren who show up. Let's
little that. Jenna and what's her face?
Yeah, the twins. But yeah, also there's a bit where characters are holding knives. I'm like, those are human-sized knives that a roach is holding? What? Anyway, before all of that happens, though, we get some Muggle funnies and warning, and also some bigotry.
Yay!
I yearn for the country life, Max. I've often thought that the bucolic pastoral setting will be more conducive to my writing.
What do you write, Muggle?
My name. I hope to be done soon.
All right, very cool.
What kind of food do they keep in there?
Who said anything about food?
Billy? Beer?
Hey, they got tons of it. Must have been on sale or something. Come on, this here is the fun part.
Hey, everyone's left.
That's because nobody wants to be here when the roaches come up. Don't ever go near them. They got diseases and stuff. Ain't that right, Muggle? Yo, Muggle. Oh, no, you fruitcake.
What's happening to him?
It's a growth flashback. He gets him from when he was a lab rat. Muggle, don't lose it. We're almost...
Hey, Muggle, don't lose it. Hey, yeah.
This is too much Charlie Adler for me in one show.
I love Charlie Adler, but the Cow and Chicken is not the show for you.
No, this is like he's doing the same voice he's doing for Chicken. You're totally right about that.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah,
You're
it's
right.
exactly the same voice.
Also, just tells like this Muggle, he's so crazy. What a goof! Well, like he annoys the other characters.
He's even got like a Hawaiian shirt on. That's how zany he is.
Yeah.
He doesn't look like a big fat party animal to me.
I mean, also, I only got that Billy Beer joke because of our Simpsons research.
Yes.
But that's how musty every fucking politics joke is in here. Like that, a joke about Billy Beer in 1992 is old. It's so old.
And it was funnier on The Simpsons because Homer says we elected the wrong Carter, and then he drinks a 15-year-old beer.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, that joke actually, The Simpsons actually did that joke. What was it? 3 months after this episode aired.
That's true. Yeah, in the auto show. Also, you know, this I just have to ask, like, log rolling that can seems a lot harder than just like pushing it. Like,
Yeah, they should be better at stealing food.
Why do they want to be funny about it? Just push it over.
Yeah, it's seemingly ditched by all the other rats too. And also, why are they stealing this?
Well, there's another. Janet likes beer and adult things. There's a joke in the first episode that he's stealing porn from somebody, and not just any porn, but a parody porn of, well, it's a reference to Elsa She-Wolf of the SS. Yes.
Really?
Yeah. Well, if you've never heard of that,
Okay.
that was one of those B picture, like lightly sadomasochistic films of the 70s about, you know, basically Skinamax before Skinamax. But Elsa was, you know, a big bodacious gal, but for some reason some of her S&M ones were about her being a Nazi torturer, which is really weird. But so if you watch the first episode and you wonder, why is Janet stealing Nazi porn? Well, it's a reference to what was then known as a famous Nazi porn. It was different time.
Okay, so this show, written in 1991, it was still too late for a character to say, check, please. Oh,
Yes.
gulp.
Yeah.
I made a note of that too because I just immediately thought, oh man, Bob's gonna hate this.
Yeah,
They
I mean,
literally say
we
it,
just
man.
did Shrek. It has a number of those jokes, including a character looking at the screen and going, uh-oh,
Yeah.
I'm in trouble. I said, no, write a joke. Go
Yeah.
back and write a joke. That's not a joke. This is a placeholder.
Even Jamet's response to Max about the corn thing is just like, yeah, it sounds real exciting. Like it's not really specific or clever about anything.
A rewrite room and other writers might have improved this on some level. I was going to say one of the other two people to write an episode of this was Rob Cohen, who would go on to
Really?
direct Fast and Furious and the Triple X films. And don't look at what he's done recently. That guy needs to be in jail. Like, it's horrible
dear.
things I learned about that Rob Cohen guy.
Okay.
Like, his child has some claims about him. I'll just say, look, it's not fun. Anyway,
I was about to say, is it Bryan Singer bad or?
it is. It is.
Yikes.
Oh, jeez.
So anyway, I also think it's kind of cowardly that the show just has Jamet say all these things. They don't want to have their other characters. Like in the first episode, Trixie does warn him, hey, don't go there. But I feel like all the rest of them I should be racist then. Like have Muggle say, hey, I'm crazy, but I'd never hang out with those roaches. Or,
Yeah, why is Jamet the only racist mouse in their group?
I think to make sure everybody else is safe from looking too bad. They just want Jamet to be the only like Archie Bunker of the group.
And again, not to skip ahead too far, but isn't he still racist at the end of this episode?
Oh yeah, he
yeah.
learns nothing. Yeah,
He doesn't learn a goddamn thing.
but yes, Muggle then freaks out and draws the attention of the cats. Who one of them obviously is meant to look like Dan Quayle, but the other looks nothing like HW. He's just a scary big cat. Like, why didn't they make it look like HW? Did they not want the killer cat everyone's scared of to look like the president?
And what is their satire? Dan Quayle is kind of sleepy. I guess.
I guess, yeah, he's like a dumb guy.
I guess it's also that and just kind of a general commentary of like, who gives a shit who the vice president is at any given moment.
Sure.
Which is ironic now because now we have Kamala Harris, which the media does want us to give a shit who the vice president is now, even though nobody liked her in that primary.
Well, I mean, what are they going to say? Like, another old white man became president? Like, you better to focus on the more positive optics of the first female vice president. Let's not talk about the very old man who wants to go to bed.
And I looked it up, and Dan Quayle's infamous potato gaffe was that summer. So they weren't even basing it off of that, where he misspelled potato with an E during like the spelling kind of thing with a little kid.
Yeah, you sure showed that kid.
I mean, I guess in '88 even he was like dunked on as like, this guy sucks. He's not a good vice president. But also, people don't vote based on who the vice president is. I don't think not most of the time.
No,
I think before that he was like, oh, look at this cornpone loser. He's like Tim Kaine or something 4 years ago. Like, who is he? Who cares? He's so boring.
I remember in the '88 debate, like Britt Hume, that asshole, but he talked about like how he actually worked hard to give Quayle a hard time because he thought he was the wrong VP choice. Like that they should have gone with one of the old evil men. Like it should have been Cheney or Rumsfeld, not this dweeb Dan Quayle.
They can't all be as exciting as Sarah Palin.
No. I also, okay, there's some more Muggle funnies here.
Muggle.
Stay back or I'll pull the pin. Either you let me talk to Elvis or I'm gonna start dropping hostages.
This is the last time I take you anywheres.
Nice lady. La, la, la.
Buckle behind you.
Ah. Jam it.
I like to think Bobcat Goldthwait was like, well, I'll just quote people if that's what you want. I'll just do Elmer.
If you don't want to write jokes, I'm not going to do it either. I'll just, Yeah, and then he says, like, I'm hunting wabbits later.
That
just
should
like,
be illegal.
Yeah, don't remind me of a better cartoon when watching this crap.
A very stock standard Elvis joke, too.
Yeah, well, in his Elmer Fudd one, he says that, and then he explodes, and they just do, like, one of the oldest classic exploded face takes in the book. And it's like, well, what do you want this show to be? What is this? Like,
yeah, fighting the urge to do a blackface gag at that moment.
Yes, yeah. I also thought, like, I didn't really think they'd kill Muggle, but characters die enough that when the cat, like, jumps out, I'm like, they could kill him. Like, people have died on this show. Yes, then they have him, like, their way of escape was opening the beer can that was all shook up, and he flies down the hallway by a couple of faceless cabinet members. If I ever see one with a fat body, I think that's got to be Dick Cheney then, of the HW cabinet. I think he was the fattest guy there.
You mentioned not knowing what the deal is with the big cat, like why he doesn't look like HW, but I guess it's because they need something to act as an antagonist in the show.
Yeah, I guess so. Why? They should have made a toy of that guy, not the Nazi roach. What the hell is that?
Yeah.
I would have to think that, if the Secretary of Defense walks down the hallway and a beer can flies down it, they would have more of a reaction than that. But I guess that's the joke, but it's a crappy joke.
Well, I think the cats were going to be in wave 2 of the figures that was never made, along with Berkeley.
Oh, Berkeley. Yeah.
And Trixie.
Yeah, the girl toys always have to wait for wave 2. They also mentioned that they got to get out of there before the roaches show up, which I guess there's an informal agreement between the roaches and the rodents that the rodents get to go first to steal stuff, and then the roaches get to do it too. Like, it seems like an ugly situation there. But yes, that's when Mose comes onto the scene, and it actually is continuity. He remembers saving Max's life in the first episode. He's like, the magical roach that shows up, saves his life, and then drops him off. And this is finally the payback of that, like 3 episodes later. The voice actor of Mose is Dorian Harewood, who is, an accomplished African-American actor. He's been in a million things, done a lot of voice work after this. He is probably most famous for the character whose nickname was 8-Ball in Full Metal Jacket.
Okay, that's him. Okay.
Yes.
I kind of want to comment on this guy's voice and his direction, but maybe I should wait until you play a clip of it.
Yeah, well, but yes, Harewood, as I was coming up to this episode, I was worried that it would at least, be a white guy doing the voice. And I'm glad that it's, at the very least, race correct casting. In 1991, 92, you didn't get that in most cartoons. So that's something.
That's all I'll give it.
Yeah, me too.
In a couple episodes after this, they have Japanese mice visit with a Japanese prime minister, but they're all voiced by Japanese or Japanese American actors.
Okay.
All three of the mice.
That's surprising.
The way they're drawn, less flattering though.
But yes, they head back to the rodent cave. This is where they're all counting the food, and this also just takes for fucking ever. It's like, pick up the pace. If they're handing off stuff like, I mean, like olive loaf jokes are also like real check please comedy too.
Yeah, like make it like even fruitcake would be better than that.
And also that character of like Ephraim, it's just like, okay, how big are you guys going? Because this is like this is Ralph from Animaniacs voice here. And also, like, what is the rules against inbreeding in their society? Is it generally looked down upon, or is it okay?
These are animals that eat their young.
Yeah, that's true.
Why do they have these rules?
The show plays around a lot with the biology of these animals and just kind of ignores it when it's convenient.
Sometimes I also was wondering, like, Jamet steals human porn and seemingly uses it. So I was like, okay, then he's into humans. He's not dreaming about like sexy female mice. He's dreaming about human women, which also is odd. But hey, if that's his thing, I'm not going to shame.
Yeah, we don't kink shame on this podcast.
But yes, we then get to hear from the representative of where me and Bob are recording this right now, Berkeley, in our next clip.
Make sure you guys meet me at the North Gate. There's a lot of protest groups on Saturdays, and I don't want you to get mixed up.
Of course, you dorks make it back without a scratch.
Are you okay, Jamet?
Do I look like I'm okay? That lousy feline cornered me in Bush's bathroom. I had to flush myself down the toilet. What are you protesting this week?
These are for the Anti-Styrofoam Coalition. There's a rally and a march to the Capitol tomorrow. I'm taking Max and Muggle along.
What is it with you? All day long, all you do is picket this, protest that. This may come as a surprise to you, but some vermin work for a living.
Is that a joke?
I mean, he says vermin instead of human, or some people.
Yeah.
Well, this is just like the most stock of like Archie Bunker scenes of just like
he's just griping at the lady who he doesn't think does enough like hard work.
And then he ends up being right.
Well, one, Jamet is like, he doesn't work for a living. His joke is that he's like a fat slob who steals shit. Like, but but secondly, Berkeley, I mean, this is hey, it's time for Henry to say the line. End of history politics here. Just like, if you are protesting something, you're just a busybody who doesn't need to, there's nothing to protest. Everything's been solved. Oh, you're worried about styrofoam? Who cares?
And the big joke this amounts to is that protesters are hypocrites.
Yep. In general, like this show takes a very like boldly centrist stance of why try anything? Even trying to do stuff is wrong. I mean, also Berkeley is cast as this very bossy woman who's making the other boys build their signs. But I also think, like, what's the point of you're supposed to hide? You can't actually protest with the protesters. They'll kill you.
Like, maybe that's a joke, but they're protesting by hiding under a park bench with their little signs.
I guess.
And looking at
it's not elaborated on very well.
No.
Looking at these characters, I just have the thing paused in front of me. Like, everybody has glasses on. What's going on with that? Like, Berkeley has glasses, Jamet has glasses, Mose has glasses. Everybody's wearing glasses in this world.
Yeah, that's I guess it goes down to the character design way. They're like, let's just draw more glasses on characters. We got too many eyes here.
Let's Rastify him by another 10%.
Well, we all know who's Rastified in this episode.
Well, yes. Okay.
Funky high tops and cool hats.
So, yes, Mose is very cool. He's in town, but people who aren't cool are gang members who are going to kill him. That's what we've got in our next clip.
Trying to crawl out of your scum hole again?
Hey, man, chill, all right? I found this hat. I'm out of here as soon as I give it back.
You roach! You didn't find it, you stole it! Besides, who'd want to wear it after you touched it?
Wait a sec. I know that guy.
Max! Looks like you picked the wrong time to see the world, buggy boy!
Hey, remember me? You carried me out when the smokers came.
Oh, yeah. How's it going?
Listen, anytime I can ever do a favor for you.
Now be good.
Come on, let's do him. Let's squash his butt. Get away from him, Squirt. We got some stomping to do.
You mean you guys want to hurt him? He saved my life.
Come on, kid, beat it. We got no hassle with you.
You know, it's really distracting me is hearing Mike Bell's voice all over this group.
Yeah.
Like, it's very, I mean, later in the episode, he just does the voice he does on Rugrats for Boris.
Boris, yeah.
Yeah, it is just the Boris voice. Thank God the soundtrack started playing this coffee house jazz. Otherwise, I would have forgotten that a black character was talking.
Well, now look, it's race neutral. The Roaches are lots of things. Like I feel for the actor here because Harewood, because I think he definitely was given a very broad direction by whoever the voice director was of like no. Like I feel like no, bigger. You're from the streets. Like that's it's just embarrassing.
I just remembered the episode ends with a white people walk like this and black people walk like this joke.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, we'll get to that.
That was seen as progressive in '92.
Yeah, the voice director for this is like, yeah, can I get you to sound like a combination of Huggy Bear and the butler from the Jack Benny show?
Oh god. Yeah, it's not so great. But also though, I have to wonder, like, so when this is happening, Max is the only one that runs off. And I wonder, like, how many times has Jamet or Berkeley or any of them just watched a visiting roach be murdered? Like, how many times have they just seen a horrible beating by this gang of rats?
Yeah, you have this violent mouse supremacist gang seemingly just murdering sentient other creatures that live in your same space.
These guys have clearly made a hobby out of it.
The way they treat Max as the crazy one for stopping it, I'm like, well, then you guys have seen a lot of death of roaches here. Like, it's darker the more you think about it. And also you're like, well, I guess there's no cops there's no like law in this world. They can just kill that guy. Like they probably killed a lot of Moses in their time.
There actually are cops, but they only exist in the Roach City, and they only exist in one episode just so that the Jamet and Max can be thrown in jail.
That doesn't even, what the hell? At least construct a more realistic, whatever.
Have we gotten to the point in the episode where Jamet eventually intervenes and saves Max?
Well,
Are we there?
yeah, so
okay.
that comes in right
at
here.
this point.
Yeah, so Jamet jumps in and offers some melon rinds to these killers who are just like, all right, fine. They'd rather eat melons than murder someone.
And in my notes, so Jamet saves Max, and then he's like, now you're my slave for life. And I'm just like, okay, so we use the word slave after this conversation about racism. And also that whole, like, now you got to do everything I say is like the oldest sitcom cliche ever.
I thought that's where the episode was going.
Me too. And then it comes back.
Yeah, I feel like in the writing, they weren't thinking about it, but I do think somebody on the animation side was like, it's weird to have our black-coded character standing in the background when he tells another character he's going to be his slave. And the way it then zooms out to make you see Mose makes me think, I feel like that somebody was trying to turn up that friction with that direction of like, no, see, there's Mose right there. He has to hear somebody call another person his slave, and it's like, that's weird.
You know, at first I thought maybe they were going for something, but then later Max says that to Jim, and I was like, well, you weren't going for anything.
Yeah, I would bet Malden maybe even thought like, oh, this is my do the right thing kind of thing, because I definitely think Mose is also styled after characters Spike Lee had played in Do the Right Thing in his other films, but this is way more West Side Story, but I'd say with even like a simpler metaphor about race in America. But I will say at the end of this clip where Jamet saves Mose, there was my one real laugh I did in this episode.
Anyway, I got a couple of melon rinds over at my place. Cantaloupe, guys. I just copped them. Come on, what do you say?
Yeah, whatever. They ain't worth squat anyway. Let's get out of here.
Phew. You owe me your life. You are my slave. I own yous. What are you looking at, bug? Get out of here! Go back to your own freaking neighborhood.
I like this place. Think I'll send my kids to school up here.
I can't believe they treated you like that.
Yeah, and those guys were the Democrats.
Look,
Here's your dumb hat. I found it upstairs.
Thanks. I'm Max.
Enchanted. I'm Mose. I'm also out of here.
But wait.
Boy, that music, I'm just hearing it more and more now.
Yeah.
Yeah, same.
The show is like aggressively scored, and it really bothers me.
It's but yes, the one time I chuckled was when he said, "Yeah," and those guys were the Democrats. Like that made me go like, "Eh."
I got a smirk out of that.
Yeah.
I wanted to provide some kind of context for here because you mentioned this thing being end of history. And think about this for a second, because less than a year before this episode airs, you have Boys in the Hood by John Singleton,
Mm-hmm.
which is about how much it fucking sucks to live in the inner city, which is because during the 90s, like everybody else seems to be doing all right, but the black community in the inner city, places like Compton, they're not doing so well. They have a lot of problems with gangs, with drugs, with the police, just kind of abusing the ever-loving shit out of them. And then at the end of that movie, there's a whole line that Ice Cube has about the news, and they're showing footage of violence here and there, just across the ocean. But when it comes to actual violence in the United States, it's like he says, they don't know, they don't show, and they don't care.
Yep. Yeah, I remember that line. Yeah.
And then after less than 3 months after this episode airs, the 4 cops who beat up Rodney King get acquitted.
Oh, wow.
And we all know what happens then.
Yeah, this well, they don't want to talk about race too much in the show. I mean, not in that way. Like, that's a scarier topic.
Yeah.
But also, this
Yeah.
is a show that doesn't want to swear as well, which is really weird. Even as a little kid, I was like, The Simpsons says bad words. Why doesn't this say bad words?
No, you're totally right. This is a very pivotal time for like race in America, and this is just whiffing at the worst possible time. And then like a few months later, Clinton gets into the White House with a lot of dog whistle racism about welfare reform.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Well, I mean, you know, for the end of history types, it's what we hear to this day, but it's like, you know, in my memory, Martin Luther King did this. Why are these people so mad? Like that. Actually, that reminded me that there is the 10th episode of the series is called The Kilowatts Riot. So,
Oh my
no.
yes, yeah.
Oh, God.
It's about a battle over like alternative sources to energy. It's
Yeah, they're fighting about electricity and who gets it.
Well, as set up in this episode, Muggle can conduct electricity somehow, but man, the Moe's getting out of there. At least he's like, yeah, it's what you do need to do. Get the hell out of there. You're about to be killed. Like, it's also that neighborhood stuff. That was where I thought, yeah, this is a very West Side Story. It feels like, but
And I know it's like a joke, but when he says, I think I'll send my kids to school here, well, yeah, that's a lot of like real world baggage, but also are there schools on the first floor of the White House for mice?
yeah, is there a mice school here? What is also mice only live in captivity. You're lucky if you get 3 years out of a rat or a mouse. So these guys don't even know more than one president, you know. This show is more short-lived than most mice. But yeah, so this is another thing. Like, the tone is so all over the place. Jammit is so big and silly, but he's like, no, this is your racist guy. This is like, there's a reason they get uncomfortable in the show of Homer even being like a homophobe in one episode. If Homer actually gave a big speech of like, no, they're not like us. I hate those type of people. They're like, if he did that regularly, you wouldn't like him. And that they do that with Jammit while they also want him to be their like the bad boy of the show. It's I don't know what they want out of this show.
Yeah, the most political I want Homer to be is him thinking that voting is a bit fruity.
Yeah. But yes, Jammit says a bunch of stuff about why it's fine to hate roaches and they're dirty and blah, blah, blah. It's just a long scene. I'm not going to play it because it's just like, you don't need to hear more Charlie Adler. We've heard it now.
We've heard a lot of Charlie Adler so far.
Yeah, we've hit our limit.
But they head up to the kitchen again, and that's when a danger is discovered.
I'm sorry, what were you saying?
Can you just do that for as long as you want?
Well, I wouldn't want to try it for more than a day or two.
Hey, the chef left a little surprise tonight. Oh boy, they ain't gonna like this at all.
Roach poison?
Dudes laid it out perfect. See, they come right through that space every night. It'll get 9 or 10 of them before they wise up. Don't touch that! You stick it in flypaper, man. That's how they nail them.
You know, listening to this again, I'm thinking the show is so aggressively scored with a real orchestra. That had to be a lot of money because I feel like no second of this show is without, score.
That should really be what Malden was complaining about in that interview. Like saying, like, we got to score everything. It's so expensive. but
It's too good for this show.
I'm shocked ABC didn't like cut that budget down. Like, you get a synthesizer, kids don't notice the difference.
Also, what kind of drooling fucking idiots are these roaches that this trap would get them?
That's another thing I had. Like, okay, so the rats are smart enough to see the poison and be like, hey, look at that. That's poison. We're not going to touch it because we are smart. The reason roach poison works is because they do not have human intelligence and can't read it, and they don't know what it is. But if these animals can read and are just little humans, then it wouldn't work. Like, but they say it will work on the roaches unless they warn them.
It's confusing.
Maybe they're just a society of illiterates because it does say roach poison on the side.
Well, and the roaches have cars, so they're more advanced than the rats.
That is true.
Yeah.
You know, the inner city they go to, there are like buildings and there's, like functional electricity and there's businesses. That's not happening in Mice World.
Yeah, in Mice World, they just have a pile of shit they grab and just like dump it all on top of each other. Like they don't have a laundromat in this in the rat house. Like,
yeah, theirs is a more advanced society than the rats are.
But yes, Max decides that he's got to warn him. It does also seem weird how relaxed the other rats are too, but they can't have Muggle say it because he's got to be nice, or it has to be some random mouse who says, no, we want them to die, let them. Like that. That's dark. Like, that's really dark. So Max decides he's going to go into the roach world. He misquotes FDR's famous quote about nothing to fear, and then just falls down a hole. So I guess you have to be a bug that can stick to walls. Or, I mean, I guess, rats are good at climbing and stuff. Maybe he just wasn't ready for it, but...
One thing that was in the audio, but we couldn't see it because this is a podcast, is that I found it very odd that they let this on TV and that Muggle is jamming something into a socket and being like, this is cool and all kids should try it at home.
That's true. That's true.
Oh, yeah, that is imitatable.
I guess their defense could be like, well, no kid has a tail they can stick in there. But like, what if little, Sally or Jimmy does that with their cat's tail or tries to? I guess you couldn't actually get it in there, but I don't know. They've got action figures with things that could go in those. Like, it's dangerous, but... Yeah, you're right. They're just showing off how fun and silly it is for this this character. Maybe that's why Malden came up with that idea too. He's like, oh, he electrocutes himself so much, we should have a whole episode about him being an electricity thing.
And then when Max lands, the only joke that I feel was written in this episode was the argument between the bugs, because I feel like, oh, that's what this should have been, where it's like everything in the real world has a correlation in this vermin world, where they're arguing about where to go to eat, and it's like they want to go to the sink or by the toilet or whatever, and it's just like, well, there's jokes there. They're not making me laugh, but that's a source of material to mine for.
I feel like I've heard this kind of old Jewish couple joke in 1,000 other shows by this point, though.
Oh, yeah.
For sure.
It's an easy stock conversation to have. The only difference is that, like, they're roaches who, instead of saying, I don't want to go to the deli or whatever, that was racist. I don't want to, look, I don't want to go.
Grandpa Boris.
I don't want to go to this restaurant. I don't want to go to that restaurant.
By the way, Michael Bell is Jewish.
Yes, yeah, he's. But yes, Max arrives in Roach World.
Hey, did I hit him? Is he dead?
You drive too fast, I said. You're gonna kill somebody, I said. Did you listen?
It's a rat.
Mouse.
Rat, mouse, 6 more inches, you would have been cream of wheat.
Sorry.
That reminds me, I'm hungry. Where do you want to eat?
I don't know. Where do you want to eat?
How about under the sink?
I'm sick of under the sink. Maybe the toilet.
Toilet, schmoilet. Every time we go in there, someone turns on the lights and we run away. Lights on, we run away. Lights off, we come back. I'm sick of it.
Rory, please.
A cream of wheat, if you're going this far with this character, say you could have been a Latka or something like that.
Yeah, you might as well.
You'll be flatter than a Latka. Yeah.
These characters actually would show up again in a later episode, which is as much like this one. It is kind of a racial thing of like, oh, we don't want them living up here. But then Max talks them into letting them stay in an old mouse hole. And it's like, oh, why did we ever not get along in the first place? And then they find out it's because roaches breed in the hundreds and the basement soon ends up getting overcrowded.
Oh, no.
Oh, wait.
And
so then the mice are right to keep them out in that world.
And later on, there's an amazing bullshit line where, like, just Max is down in the city with Mose, and he's like, oh, I don't know why it didn't work. And then Mose just tells him, like, oh, you're thinking like the people up here, but we're animals. And it's like, no, you're not. You live in a pastiche of human society. You act exactly like people do.
yeah, you're little people, but that overcrowding thing of like, oh, let's let in the different people. Oh no, they outbred us. That's like the white replacement theory. Like,
that's why
the rat replacement.
They were gonna write in Mouse Bill Gates to come in and sterilize everyone.
Well, cockroaches don't have foreskin, so I don't think they'd be interested.
But yeah, that is Michael Bell doing his Boris voice he would do later in Rugrats, after this.
And then there's this like way too long pan across the city because everything takes way too long in this show, just to show you like everybody is so ethnic. And then this Rob Paulson voice in the background is so distracting.
Yes, yeah, it's I didn't want to play it. It's too distracting.
Where it's like the most broadish like Russian accent or something.
Hey, what's that? Yeah, no, I mean there's an Asian roach. There's Italian roach. It's, I guess, all immigrants are roaches, I guess.
And
which is weird to say. Don't put that out when I said that.
And then like another placeholder joke from Jammit when he shows up again, where it's like the first placeholder joke was check please. The other one was like, hey, it ain't Club Med. Just like the most stock fucking sitcom joke in the universe.
I was annoyed at that too because I made that exact same note. Like, we're making a fucking Club Med joke now.
It's like this guy. If he tried that joke in the Barney Miller writers' room a decade earlier, they would have said, "Let's try that again, Malden. We can do better. We don't need the most obvious joke." But I'm guessing he just wrote these solo. But yeah, you're right. Max goes chasing after what he thinks is Moe's. He then goes into a dark alley, and he's just too simple and innocent. Like, again, when he gave that speech earlier in the episode to Muggle of like, but we'd never do that in Nebraska. Like, we wouldn't look down on someone because they're different. It's like, yuck. I mean, maybe it's that he's so innocent he didn't know how racist his family members were.
Probably. That could be it.
Yeah.
Yeah, his dad worked at the racism factory.
Or else he just lived in like a white enclave that his family moved to in Nebraska. It's like, well, yeah, you're never going to see any roaches here. That's why we moved here. I hate those guys. But yes, they then really complicate this metaphor in this alley here as Jammit and Max are cornered.
Well, what do you know? Fuzzies.
Yeah, what about it?
You can't find your way home, rat face?
Go boff a beetle, you creep.
Jammit, he's bigger than you are.
Big, wow. The guy's a mama's boy here. Plus, we got his knife, don't we? Now what we gotta do is get this.
All right, okay. So he's got a giant swastika on his hat. Just so you know he's a bad guy. By the way, buy the action figure version of him. Yes. He's available now. And then we get to what I feel like, well, that's a new thing to unpack and the show is not ready for it, is like, well, now you have your own version of the N-word for mice, and they're called fuzzies.
Yeah. I mean, when they just showed that there are Jewish roaches, to then have a neo-Nazi roach, I'm like, whoa, stop right here, guys. Where is your metaphor now? You know, what is this Nazi roach compared to the other roaches? Like, what, is he a German roach? Is he the son of German roaches? Like, I don't understand it at all. I said before, but just the idea of like roaches holding human-sized knives of varying sizes, like, and oh man, this giant roach that towers over like a big fat rat of Jammit. The scale is just all wrong here.
You wouldn't expect to hear Jim Cummings play a gay Nazi biker, but here we are.
Yeah, like before the rats had, cocktail things with like olives on them or whatever, they had like makeshift weapons, but they're holding like actual knives now in this world. And this is the same kind of like simplification of racism you saw in a lot of things from this time, where it's like, oh, it's bad if both sides do it, and they remove the power equation from racism entirely, which is what matters.
Yeah. They don't show that like one society is the dominant one and controls how the other expresses itself. It just is more of like, both are crazy. Can you believe it? These guys act just like the other guys. But yes, Mose saves the guys with a speech that even he admits is bad and bad writing in this next clip.
You out of your mind? Back off, boy. What's the matter with you? You back off. What did a rotten fuzzy ever do for you? So that makes it right, huh? 60 million years we've been on this planet. 60 million, and we never started trouble with nobody. Now you want to change that now? You really want to be the first? Let's go. It smells in here.
We should have taken him down, huh?
Man, they bought that?
You were lying?
I ain't been here 60 million years. How do I know who we started trouble with?
Whoa, that was close. I mean, we are talking close. Thanks.
What you thanking me for? Only reason you ain't in a dozen pieces is because of him.
You owe me your life. You are my slave. I own you.
Come on, man.
Come on, man.
This feels like like when Spike Lee, he may do the right thing, right? When I saw the movie, I read a bunch about it, and one thing that pissed him off was like Spike Lee said a lot of white people walked out of the movie saying, well, it was wrong when they shot Radio Raheem, but it was also wrong when they trashed the pizza place, so I can see how both sides are wrong. He's like, no, fuck you.
Yes, yeah.
He was just showing how anger manifests itself into, destruction when there's no other outlet for it. It wasn't like, no, see, both sides are wrong. I think that's the same person who saw that and walked away with that interpretation wrote this episode.
Well, remember that Do the Right Thing lost the Academy Award to Driving Miss Daisy.
Yes.
Yeah.
That stinks.
The first of many heartbreaks for Spike Lee at the Oscars, unfortunately. But hey, who's talks about Driving Miss Daisy ever these days? He history at least is on his side there. Yeah, but there were a lot of people who didn't get that film of like Radio Raheem, he shouldn't have resisted the cops, right? Like, well, that just people completely missed the point, and this is a similar missing of the point of, oh, see, they've got they'll say it later, but like, oh, you've got guys like that in your neighborhood too. Everybody hates each other, right? It's like, well, sure. Like, that is such an extreme simplification of race relations in America as to be like insulting.
Every community in this setting just has a pan-ethnic gang in it.
Yes, you're right. It is a pan-ethnic gang who's just like, well, they don't like rodents at the very least. They were going to stab him to death. Also, I would think those roaches have probably killed their fair share of mice, and this would not be the first for them. But again, I like that Mo says, that speech worked. That was bullshit. Like, that was a garbage speech I gave. But yes, then we head up to the real world, and we get to see a riot is starting in front of the White House, which kind of like, that would be big news if that happened. Like, a bunch of people got gassed last year, and that was a pretty big news. But here they seem to treat it as like, these jerks about styrofoam are fighting the pro-styrofoam people. It's like, what? First off, to just pick that as the thing of like styrofoam, like that's what people like, that's not the fight.
It feels like, oh, like they're fighting over this petty thing, and then I guess the one joke is that like Berkeley, the peaceful hippie, calls someone a butthead for throwing a bottle. I just exaggerate that, do something more. That am I supposed to be mad at her for calling somebody a butthead?
Also, Berkeley needs to join in the fight, man. If the anti-styrofoam people took the first swing, you got to back up your team. That's what I think. I know I'm going against what Max says earlier in the episode that violence doesn't solve anything, but yeah.
It's kind of strange because, I mean, I know counter-protesting has probably been around for pretty much as long as protesting in general has, but I kind of associated that more with kind of post-2016 and just this awful unending culture war we exist in now.
I mean, I do recall in 2003 going to, local in Florida anti-Iraq war stuff, and there were some people who showed up, but usually like there's you don't see as much anti-protesting for the establishment. And also the anti-protesters, you're just making it a bigger deal. It's back then you just count on the media doesn't talk about it. Like there was 1 million people showed up to protest the illegal invasion of Iraq. Well, if you don't really talk about it or treat them like goofballs like they treat Berkeley in this episode, well then you can just ignore it.
Yeah, social media is terrible for a lot of reasons, but it did also kind of give a lot of exposure to so many protests everywhere.
Definitely.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, when I watched a documentary about Nader's run in 2000, an amazing point they made is like, look how many people showed up to this event of his, this event of his, this event of his. But if you lived in 2000, you'd had no idea because the news did not treat him as a serious candidate. And once it could show you or not show you something, you could ignore Ralph Nader's candidacy and just treat him like, this crazy third party, even though he had like millions of people showing up for him.
I voted for him.
But yes, they then cut back down to them walking around and Jamet. He's still an asshole.
What is this weak crud? Think I care about these disease-ridden puff bags?
Everybody was just starting to like you, too.
It's true. If you touch a roach, you get sick and die.
Oh, yeah? Coming from a sewer rat, that's saying something.
Hey, the sewer is an operating room compared to this place. I heard plenty about you guys.
Did you take a class or something when you got that Yale scholarship?
Yeah, it was called Scum 101.
Man, is there anything about me you do like?
Your breath is surprisingly fresh.
Why am I even talking to you? Just take a hike, all right? We got enough fools of our own down here.
Hey, Gandhi, I thought it over. I do want to be the first.
Run, damn it!
Great writing there.
Yeah.
Just like, oh, the threat's gone? Oh, wait, no, it's back for no reason.
At least he admits, like, you know what? I decided I do want to get away with murder. I am just going to do it. Yeah.
I decided I do want some smoke in the city right now.
Yes. I at least like that Mose has the correct response. Like, why am I talking to a racist? Like,
Yeah.
get the fuck out. I'm wasting
Yeah,
my
why
time.
am I wasting my time right now?
And then they have to escape from the Nazis who are going to kill them, like murder them in the streets. And then Jamet steals a car, and Max is like, "You're stealing?" Just like, this is the wrong time to have this kind of morality. You were trying to save your life, you moron.
I guess he's supposed to be like a dweeb, and Jamet is the city smart guy. He's street smart, and he can show off like, no, we got to get out of here. That's stealing. That's dying. Hey.
And I guess we passed over the joke where Max pissed all over the floor.
Oh, right. Yes. He says,
Yeah.
don't look scared. Well, the puddles are a dead giveaway.
I
Maybe
was
they
like-
piss themselves right there.
I was going to say that could be a good joke, but it does not match the show.
No.
No.
That also just makes me think of their genitals of like, I guess their dicks are just they all don't wear pants like, but the girls wear dresses. They're not bottomless.
Yeah, they're covering their shame.
But then again, Mose, I mean, he's an insect, so he doesn't really have genitals. And the other roaches who don't wear pants, they don't have them either. But yeah, I guess they just pissed on the floor and they just left it all alone. They're like, whatever, I pissed myself. But yeah, so we then have a big old chase scene, very wacky town of which I kept thinking like this chase scene, a chase section through the Roach Town must have been planned for that video game,
Oh, for sure. And this takes
Yeah.
forever, like any action sequence in this series.
They also screwed up again with the scale of objects because those roaches have tiny roach-sized wrenches and hammers that they're going to presumably beat them to death with.
Yeah, you're right. Well, did they steal those from a dollhouse too? Did everything come from a dollhouse?
And how are they getting these professionally made signs?
Hey, yeah. And what even is a laundry? And also all the clothes they're washing. Like, what is a washing machine at a laundromat in Roach Town?
Also, this show about racism has a character named Guido
Yeah.
who runs out using a talent he got from the Mario and Luigi RPG series.
Look, you can't be racist against the Italians.
It's
We
true.
already know that.
Prince told me that in that meme.
I was also thinking about the not just the canceled video game, but also in the interview from '92. Malden does say they're already preparing a second season because you got to be ready early. So they definitely wrote episodes and storyboarded them. So I bet even they got some voice acting for those lost episodes. He even said they're planning an election night episode where they'll change it based on who wins. So
That sounds like a lot of work.
sadly, we never got to see how hard they would have worked on that.
And then in this episode where it's about like, don't hate people because they're different. In this car chase, they drive through this laundry place and, Jamin ends up with this basically women's clothing on him. And then when they end up picking up Mose is like disgusted. He's just like, ugh,
Yes.
you're a sick freak.
He's like, hey, it's not mine. Like, yeah, we're all weirded out by a man wearing women's clothes. It's that unites them really in their disgust for that practice. Yeah, that's sad. All right, so then they run in. Like you said, everything takes too long. This chase takes way too long. They eventually, after a long time of running through sewers, they get cornered. Like Mose says he's going to save them at his own sacrifice, but he just gets kind of like conked on the head and the rest of the gang just runs past him. They don't care to kill him.
They just stampede over him.
Yeah, in a very cartoony joke in this very deep metaphor about like race and racial violence. And then we get, this is something I wouldn't have done either in a script, that the saviors of them briefly are the gang that was going to murder Mose before, it almost makes the stance of like, hey, if these guys may be bad, but they're going to cover you in the race war.
You have to pick the right racist to side with.
Yes, yeah. Oh, you're not so upset at these bikers now, these racist bikers now that they'll protect you, are you?
And they try to make this gang fight funny, but it's just horrifying. They have real weapons.
Yeah, they have jokes of like, oh, he punched him and all of his teeth fell out. He bit his tail, but especially with the outcome of it, this is supposed to be a disturbing fight of like, what has society come to? We must be better than this. Like, that's what the message is supposed to be, but it wants to just be a silly cartoon fight.
Yeah, the message ends up feeling like, oh, I guess this problem solved itself in the end.
But yes, Berkeley has well, she's got the moral of the story right here.
I guess we better skip the march, huh?
There isn't gonna be a march. They're too busy beating each other's brains out. Hey, let's get out of here. They're setting another car on fire.
That doesn't do much for global warming, does it?
Yo, man!
You found us.
Where's everybody else?
Back there. The roaches ran into the rats. They're fighting each other, Mose, and I don't even think they know why.
They don't. That's why they're fighting so hard. Can you swim?
Yeah? Why?
Stand up quick and hold on to him real good.
Mose, what's happening?
Now, whatever you do, don't look behind you. Just hang on tight.
He also is like the magical black man like 5 times in the show.
Yeah.
Like, well, time to show up and save the white guys.
This is the 5th time he's saving their lives.
Yeah. But also, like, that's bad writing, just this like oversimplification. Like, they don't even know why they're fighting. That's why they're fighting so hard. It's like, I think they know why they're fighting each other in a racist mob. They hate each other based on their race. Like
The Simpsons did a much better joke about this with Homer's phobia, where John saves Homer's life, and he says, if every gay man could do the same for you, Homer, we'd all be in a better place. Where the idea is like, in this episode about understanding, the different character has to save the hateful character's life to get him on their side.
Yeah. And characters like Mose or John in that Simpsons episode that he jokes about it, he only exists for the lives of the main characters. Like, Mose doesn't say like, well, I got to get to my job, or like, hey, I don't want to risk my life for you guys because I barely have a home, or I have a wife. Like, Mose just exists to save a little white boy in Max. Like, that's why he exists.
It's also kind of weird that it seems like the show is posing that the reason these communities have problems is because there's just gangs of these thugs, these racist thugs running around. Like, there's nothing to be said about, cops hassling anyone or not being able to make the rent or anything like that, or any kind of poverty. It's just these gangs causing problems.
Or like, or like where racism comes from.
Yeah, no, you're right. That is a very 1992 message of like, it's these violent thugs, these super predators, ones would say even. I mean, this is why Joseph Robinette Biden made that the cartoon All-Stars to the Rescue video.
Yeah, just a few years before this.
Yeah. Well, also that speech Berkeley gives of just like, yeah, caring about things is dumb, isn't it? Like, they actually caused more of the problems they tried to prevent. Why'd they even bother? What a fucking take that. And then in a very biblical moment, a flood wipes it all away and drowns the sinners, killing them.
They are presumably just killed.
Yeah.
Yeah, like 20 characters who are all talking before are just drowned. And it makes me think, okay, so one character is a racist who can be, redeemed. Everyone else should just die.
Well, I guess Jamet is a racist who doesn't want to kill them. He just will call people the roach N-word to their face, but he won't actually like actively harm them.
It's like the idea is that we should just, you just have to get used to everyone just constantly ribbing and shitting on one another.
Yeah. But yes, then after all those characters die, like, we then get a very cartoony joke of them all waking up together and Mose saying to the bridal veil wearing Jamet, I want a divorce. But what a funny line. But Jamet then just walks away. He doesn't even get another line in this episode. But we get, I'm sure, a happy ending that does not, that doesn't feel weird at all.
I think Jamet's still kind of mad at me.
Oh, he ain't mad at you, man. He's just mad. That's the way he is.
I guess you've got some guys like that where you live, too.
Oh, you noticed that?
Well, this is it.
Uh-huh. It was a slice, man.
Thanks for showing me around.
Thanks for thinking about us. We'll skip the kitchen tonight. Oh, I almost forgot.
My hat. Where'd you find it?
Right near my crib. I can't pick up after you forever, you know.
Where I grew up, they said if you leave something behind, like a hat, it means you want to come back someday. Probably sounds pretty stupid to you.
Now, hang on. Let me just think about that. Yeah, it's pretty stupid. You be good, homie.
Take care, Mose.
Hey, yo!
Yo, Holmes, what up?
Oh.
Yeah.
He would get canceled on Twitter for using black vernacular. That's not a good look.
Yeah, Mose throws the hats back and he puts it on the hat, and you gotta, I mean, it's on YouTube. You just gotta watch this like wacky ass jive walk, and that is not even enough. Another character has to fucking look at the screen, some unnamed mouse going like, "Ghoul? What the heck?"
A white person shouldn't say that.
It's true. We're so lame.
Man, yeah, it's incredibly corny to say the least, if not like super patronizing that Max thinks he's like, hey, I talk like a black person now. It's just all effed up. I guess also it's lame because I think the writer probably thinks it's like, see, it's showing we can see eye to eye, and this is an exchange of cultures.
We can
here.
co-opt your culture and profit from it.
Yeah.
Does anybody else also think it's a little strange that this child has an adult friend like that?
It is weird.
That's true.
Mose has a family.
That's true.
With children.
Yeah.
And also he says it's been a slice.
Yes, he
All
does
right,
say
sure.
that. Sure. Yeah, it's that reminds me of a interview I saw with Tupac where he was talking about one of the films he was in and just clowning on the name they gave him because they're like, oh yeah, what do white people think is a nickname in the hood? Sure, yes, that.
Yeah, DJ Pajama Boy.
Well, yes, what are you gonna do? Like, it's an entirely white staff writing this shit, and they probably thought they'd win, like, an award for tolerance.
I can
or
smell
whatever.
that Peabody.
Yes, yeah. they thought they solved racism that day by saying, like, you have people who are jerks like Jamet down there too. I guess everybody's racist. The end.
And I shouldn't say that I would have ever expected a show like this to solve anything. Nor would I ever expect any kind of piece of media to really do that.
Sure.
But watching this, it's just like, holy shit.
I think this episode later inspired Best Picture winner Crash.
Oh, God, I fucking hate that movie so much.
I bet Malden was a contemporary of the Crash writer-director. They both worked in sitcoms around the same time.
Paul Haggis gave him some notes on this.
Yeah. But watching this, I'm like, I know exactly why ABC canceled this. Like, what a mistake. It's so, putting aside even like the incredible pile of cliches or like the very stereotypical voice they asked the actor to portray with Mose, even beyond that, all that baggage. This is just like a boring show that like it doesn't appeal. It's too kiddie for adults because they don't swear like on The Simpsons. It doesn't get into deeper issues, but it's also not edgy enough for kids. Like part of the appeal of Simpsons was hearing Bart do things that were wrong. Like nobody does anything that's like actually subversive in this.
Yeah, Max is just a goody-goody character, and that's all he is.
Jamet's right to call him a dweeb all the time. He is.
I hate Max, and the show is just pure mediocrity. It's not even so bad it's good. It's just like, it's a weird curiosity, but then when you want to get into it and be like, yeah, how bad is this? It's such a flatline show. It's just, it's hard to watch. I'm not surprised. There's never been renewed interest or never been like, oh, a second look at Capitol Critters. It's actually pretty progressive. It's not. It's bad.
Yeah.
And it was right to be a tombstone in The Simpsons.
I almost backed out of picking it because I was like, oh man, this is.
No, this was a good pick, especially just for the history of animation, of American animation. It is an interesting touchstone and a lesson for us all in many ways about how to make or not make a cartoon show.
Well, at least we learned that, because I can tell you this episode didn't teach me jack shit otherwise.
But thank you, Professor Gascan, for coming on, for being one of our top patrons and picking this episode.
Oh, no problem. I mean, this whole podcast really helped me keep going at a really awful point in my life, so I figured, may as well grab the top slot while I could.
Oh, well, we're glad to have done that for you. Thank you. If you have anything you'd want to promote or tell people about to watch or whatnot, you're free to do so.
Well, I have no professional career and no real presence. I actually don't have anything to promote, but I will say next time I'll pick a much less terrible and more interesting cartoon for us to discuss.
Well, all right. We'll look forward to that then. But I guess thank you one more time, Professor Gascan.
Yes, thank you.
Great pick.
No problem.
So thanks once again to Professor Gascan for being on the show and being one of our top patrons. If you want to be cool just like them, please go to patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons. Sign up at the $5 level to get all these episodes 1 week at a time and ad-free, and also access to everything behind the $5 paywall. That gives you access to everything we made behind that paywall for 4 whole years of this Patreon. That is over 100 bonus full-length podcasts, including our limited miniseries. The most recent one was Talk King of the Hill Season 2 Part 1. That was 11 new episodes of Talk King of the Hill, our King of the Hill retrospective miniseries. And there is a new miniseries coming at you in the fall of 2021. And we also have a $10 level. When you sign up for that, you get all of the $5 stuff, of course, but also access to 1 mega-long podcast once a month, only for patrons of that level or higher. And what is that, Henry?
Bob is talking about the What a Cartoon Movie podcast. If you enjoy this podcast about animated shows, then you'll like our premium one about animated feature films. We have covered a wide gamut of stuff over the last 3 years. You could hear over 120 hours of awesome podcasts this month. If you sign up, you'll get to hear us talk about the 1997 Disney film Hercules, where we'll also be talking about Bobcat Goldthwait being a silly character who also has magical powers. And the month before that, we talked about Cool World. I did like Capital Critters more than Cool World.
Yeah, both 1992.
Oof.
And terrible year.
And the month before that, Shrek. And we've got a giant back catalog you can listen to if you sign up at the $10 level to hear everything at patreon.com/TalkingSimpsons. You won't regret it.
As for me, I've been one of your hosts, Bob Mackey. You can find me on Twitter as Bob Servo, and my other podcast is Retronauts, a classic gaming podcast about old video games. Find that wherever you find podcasts, or go to patreon.com/Retronauts. Sign up there for 2 full-length bonus episodes every month. Henry, what about you?
You can follow Henry Gilbert on Twitter at HENEREYG. That's HENEREYG. To keep up to date in the world of Henry Gilbert, and I'm sure tweeting a lot about politics, far more than the Capital Critters talks about politics. Also, if you're following both of us on Twitter, you really should be following the official Twitter account of this podcast network, and that is at TalkSimpsonsPod. At TalkSimpsonsPod. That is where you will stay up to date whenever new episodes go live, whenever there's announcements on the Patreon, whenever there's a poll, any of that stuff. You stay up to date if you follow at TalkSimpsonsPod on Twitter.
Thanks so much for joining us, folks. We'll see you next time for the Sailor Moon R episode, Mirror, Mirror, and we'll see you then.
This is Charles Gibson. Tomorrow, the national debt. Just what is it costing you? Also, sexual harassment in the workplace. How to determine if you're a victim. And then later in the week, Sissy Spacek on Good Morning America.
Stay tuned for President Bush's State of the Union address next, followed by a Democratic response.
Be very, very quiet. I'm 100%